Here we go. Let's stand for the correction. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America,
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'll read school district's mission statement by our, grounded by our history. As one of the oldest publicly supported schools in Wisconsin, Mineral Point School District is the heart of a small community that educates and inspires our students for a bright future in a big world. Okay, take roll call.
Bergstrom,
Here.
Bush,
Here.
Dunn,
Here.
Harris, Eisner,
Here.
Johnston,
Here.
Skelby.
Here. Okay, next we have the consent agenda. Includes minutes from the regular meeting, December 11th, and the joint operations policy committee meeting on December 7th. Also includes bills payable and credit card statement for the last month. So I'll take a motion to approve these all together, or we can approve them separately.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay. Any comments or questions about anything included in there? No? Okay.
Bush,
Yes.
Harris, Eisner,
Yes.
Johnston,
Yes.
Skelby,
Yes.
Bergstrom,
Yes.
Dunn.
Yes. Okay, next we'll go to communications. We'll start with any board communications received. Joni, we'll start with you.
Yeah, so I had a couple communications come through by email. I'm guessing the entire board received the ones I'm going to refer to. There was one regarding open enrollment that I think we'll probably discuss in greater detail as we move throughout the evening. There was one about considering a summer program option for Kids Club, which again, I think is probably something that, well, it's not on the agenda tonight, perhaps in an operations committee meeting in the future, that'll be a topic. And then I had some follow-up exchanges. Last month, they had brought forward a question from a community member or a parent of students in the district about students who, or about the volunteers that interact with our students. And so Mitch and I have had some back and forth about that over the course of the month. And I think that's probably a topic that should come before the personnel committee in the future. And we should just review that and make sure we fully understand the policy and determine if there's some opportunities to beef that up, or at least, or maybe just to publish it so that the community understands what our expectations are around volunteers. So those would be what I had.
Nothing in addition to that.
Okay.
Nothing in addition.
I don't know that I got the open enrollment one, so I don't know if somebody
Yeah,
wants
Joni,
to.
I think that.
Oh, I
just
apologize.
Just went to me and you, I believe.
Okay. That I apologize. I misspoke there. Then perhaps, well, I'll let you speak, and maybe we need to share a little bit more about that then.
Sure. Go ahead, Andy.
Other than that, I had a few interactions, positive interactions. I was able to attend a Christmas symphony downtown before Christmas, and had a couple people out of town that I didn't know just mention how great it was, how many students there were assisting, taking tickets, working the concession stand, stuff like that. And then over the weekend attended the Hall of Fame ceremony and at the girls' game, and had a couple people who were back for that, former alumni that said the same thing. They couldn't believe that there was students, sitting on the sidelines doing play-by-play. There was more students sitting by the scoreboard doing the video board. Just couldn't believe how many opportunities there were for students outside of the athletes at an athletic event. So just it's positive feedback on the number of opportunities that are being created for students to get involved, and also about how many students are giving their time to be involved. So.
Yeah, so let me see. Just to add on to the parent concerns about the questions about the Summer Kids program. I did reach out to Mr. Wainwright and Mr. Ingwell about what the kind of status was of that. And so Mr. Ingwell had said that he and Mo had spoken briefly about it. So he was going to give us an update during his building update. So we can kind of maybe take it from there. So we'll at least get that at this meeting. The parent email about open enrollment was basically from a family that has 4 kids. They just moved outside of the district and they're open enrolling. Their kids, one of them needs special services that and the parent's application for special services for that specific child was denied as an open enrollment due to limited services or limited capacity. And so she was concerned that, she wanted all her kids to come to the district. So I know Mr. Wainwright is aware of this. I haven't followed up with him about it because the email came today. I was just replying to her as you guys were waiting for me to start the meeting, just to say I'd follow up with her about it. So, again, we don't have to delve into this specific issue for too long during the open enrollment part of the meeting, but I think it's probably relevant to the discussion as far as setting caps for open enrollment for special ed services. Would that be correct, Mitch, that this is what we're going to be determining today?
Yep.
Okay.
And I have to caution because you set a policy. We reviewed the policy a few months ago, and the recommendation coming out of the policy committee was to not make any changes to the open enrollment policy as well. So, but yes, that's part of the conversation when we get to the approving open enrollments for next year.
Can I ask a clarifying question? It was a family who was here and they've moved out of the district?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. Okay, thank you.
2022, they bought a family home.
Okay.
Just outside of the district. Okay. Mr. Harris, welcome.
Thank you.
We're in board communications if you'd like to share anything. We mentioned the summer kids program and there was a parent concern about open enrollment.
Yeah, nothing.
Limitations, nothing. Okay. All right, so we'll go to citizen communications. Angie, did anyone sign up?
None here.
None here. Okay. Anyone in the room want to speak up? Okay. Anyone online? Doesn't look like there's anyone except for the newspaper. Okay. So we'll move on to items for information and discussion. First thing is, I want to make it a standing item on the agenda to review our board priorities that we selected. So it's a chance for us just take a couple minutes to go through those. First is retention and recruitment of staff. But you don't have those priorities or action plans quickly at hand to pull up on the screen?
I do not.
Okay.
But I can speak to some of the things we've done. We've had we've had some long-term subs to start our school year off. We've provided kind of a thank you gift, token of appreciation for staff members that have filled in those roles for us. They were very well received by anybody that was filling in that long-term subbing position. We have conducted staff potlucks. It used to be kind of on a sense of the building. Hey, we should probably have a staff potluck. It's kind of get that feeling. Now it's been scheduled on a monthly basis, and basically the staff potluck is taking place in both buildings on the same day around the same theme. We found out we were maybe missing some people that went between buildings, that maybe the elementary was having it on a particular day that their rotation was to be in this building or vice versa. So There's been some more coordination between both buildings. In the fall of the year in September, we had kind of a get together out at Dodge Point, provided bean bags, cards, snacks, mixed teams for golf, anybody that wanted to golf, just trying to get both buildings to interact together, as opposed to just typical middle school dance where these kids stand here and the boys stand there and the girls are over there, and, you know, try to get the staff mixed together a little bit more. We also did something then out at Dodge Point the Wednesday before break. We invited as many retired staff members as we had addresses for. We had a response, 28 former teachers or employees who have retired from the district came back, and were out at Dodge Point. I thought it was well received. I'd heard some comments from some people there. Thank you for the invite. I don't know if any of my other administrators want to speak to that, but we continue to try to kind of bring people together and honor the past. I know that was some of the things that had came up, common conversations during the retreat is, you know, maybe we should need to honor our alumni and our veterans that have since moved on, and we've tried to do that. And I share with everybody that was there that we would certainly be looking to do this again next year, and that we would want to continue to extend those invitations out to anybody that has retired from the Mineral Point School District. We have some more student teachers now coming up in the second semester, and we will be extending some gas cards and kind of following along the policy or the plan that was part of the board retreat once we get some of those staff members in here as well.
Great. And then you have the staff representatives selected.
Yep.
And we're meeting with them on Thursday.
On Thursday at 6 o'clock. I've had a couple people who said that they maybe only be able to make a portion of the meeting or couldn't make that one. I said, please stay on the list. There'll be additional meetings, and we'll try to get them out a little bit farther in advance. And then I had a couple people express willingness and an interest of joining. So I certainly opened the door and said, you know, if you'd like to come, yeah, we'll be here on Thursday. So that is set up and ready to for this week.
So we have a tentative agenda put together, thanks to Member Bergstrom. She did a little rough agenda, which is very helpful. Dr. Nutter's going to facilitate the conversation, and I'm going to meet with him tomorrow morning just to kind of finalize the plan and you know, kind of set the intention for the meeting and go over to the agenda, and hopefully we'll be able to send a final agenda out to all the attendees ahead of time. I think
What date is that?
most
It's
Thursday. I think it's going to be a quorum. Yeah.
I think you have to post the school board convention as well, don't you? Yeah. Since we're all there.
The second priority will be addressed a little bit later in the agenda when we have an update from the buildings. Social emotional group is here, the team is here, so they can address that component when they get to that part of your agenda.
I was able to pull up the document. We were going to read some recruitment materials. Is that a wheel that's set in motion?
We're still working on that. Yep.
Okay. And who's taking the lead on that? Is that a Joel thing, or is that a Pointer Media project? Or
I'm going to have the Pointer Media put together some interview questions for veteran teachers, for new to our district teachers, and kind of edit that video clip together so that we could put that online on our webpage. It's kind of that first initial piece of recruitment material.
we also wanted to increase student teacher placements. How's the student teacher situation this semester?
I'll ask, fall semester was very low, but I'll ask my two building administrators here about second semester.
Fall semester is usually a little more limited, because people aren't usually doing stuff in the fall. Coming this spring here, up here, we have we actually just got three student teachers. I will say, UW Platteville does a very nice job of reaching out to us when they have placements, and asking. One of the ones we didn't take on this spring is for a teacher that's new here this year. They're like, I'd rather, I'm like, okay. And they're like, just please leave us on that list for the future. So, and down there,
I have three of the intern and then two others.
for the second semester.
Is that higher than in the past?
Depends on the year.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
don't even like the interns. And 1 year we struggled, which were, I think it was last year. We had Isaiah's intern one semester before he was done, so he went back and finished classes. But it all depends on this year they're in college.
Mhm.
Some years there's a lot, some years it's minimal. There, so.
I would say that 4 to 5 is pretty standard for our school district.
All right, so that's recruitment and retention of staff. We'll get an update on how our social emotional learning staff are coming along. So, there was mention about utilizing tier 1 universal lessons and sources of strength and CASEL framework. So we'll get an update on that. And then the third thing is board governance. I think we, are using committees better. We've got a consent agenda on the meeting agenda. We're using the meeting self-evaluation tool. We're attending the state convention. I think those are all positive. We established board norms. Any other comments people want to make about how we're doing so far, or things we should put on the short list? I guess this is also a good time to say that I think I have invites sent out for our winter retreat. It's going to be 2 weeks from today.
The 22nd, right?
Yeah. So I think that'll be good timing. We'll be back from the convention, with lots of ideas, and we can kind of, throw those all in the fire and see.
I will not be able to join
Oh,
on the
okay.
22nd.
Okay.
I'm hoping I didn't previously mark that as a day available.
I don't know if you did or not.
Okay.
It may be offsite. Typically what we've done in the past.
What time is it? 6?
Yeah, I think it'd be usable time.
Wonder one thing, just for people to know, like the information that you're reading about the goals and the actions is online. So if you go to the district site, you can find that. And then the other is maybe we can think about like what our role in governance is with continuous improvement or goal setting and what it's not when we go to the conference, just to think about where's the boundary and what we hold ourselves accountable for hours to.
Mhm.
Okay, great. If there's no other comments or questions about that, I'll go ahead and move on to the next item, which is the school board election timeline.
So there were 3 seats available. There are 4 candidates. We drew lots. Member Harris was in as the clerk to perform to oversee the process. Ballot registration or the ballot will look Rachel Bergstrom, Justin Skelding, Ellen Schrank, and Aaron Dunn in that order. That's how the names will play out. There will not be a need for a primary. So it'll be the general election in April will determine board. So it'll be you can vote for up to 3 candidates for the spring election for the school board. It should be all 3. I think they all 3 are in the same term this time. Yep. Yep. Rachel was filling the rest of Bob's seat. So, yep. Yep. So all 3 seats are for 3 years.
Okay, thank you. All right, next is the first reading of our updated policy for orienting new school board members.
This should be in your board packet.
Basically, you know, we're trying to just define what would be helpful for a new school board member in terms of getting up to speed on what it means to be on the school board and how to attend meetings, how to prepare for meetings. And, you know, there's a nice orientation packet that WASB provides. And we've kind of divided it up chronologically, pre and post election. And then who's responsible, whether it's the board president, superintendent, Angie. You know, there'll be like a orientation folder that they'll get or a binder. So just like to make that board policy so that we can continue that practice long term. Hopefully it'll encourage more people to feel like it's not so daunting to join the school board.
Well, and a good place, once it's in board policy, it's a good place for people to start looking to if they're interested in being a board candidate.
Mm-hmm.
It provides some background information as well.
Well, so first reading, we just simply take no action if there's no recommendations for revision. Is that right?
You're right. If anybody has anything they think should be added, now would be the time to make that known so that when we bring it back in February, it'll be the second reading and for full approval. So if everybody's fine with what it is, we can move on to the next agenda item.
That's good.
It's great. I think it's,
And I would say, you know, thanks to Member Bergstrom being the newest to kind of give us some things to us to, hey, it would have been nice to know, or
She had the prototype.
Being the lost it.
yeah,
She had the prototype.
being the lost sheep and helping us bring her back into the fold, so to speak.
This is a type, like an edit thing, but
Oh,
the page 202, it says yet to be developed and ratified. We actually did do that, so just so that it's not in policy. Roman numeral 9, page 39.
yeah,
Super
did
small
you see
detail.
that, Angie?
I can't
I'm
hear.
sorry, is page 2 of policy 162. Under Roman numeral 9, where it says copy of board norms.
You can take that out, take the yet to be developed and
You see where it
ratified.
says copy of board norms? At,
Copy of board member.
at the top of page 2 of the policy 162.
Referencing this copy of board norm. We could take out the yet to be determined and actually put link in the board norms.
Because it has
will be,
because it has been developed and ratified. Yeah, good catch. Anything else on that? Okay, we'll go with an update from the Pupil Services Department.
Yep, they're coming.
Okay, good.
They're just slow.
Thank you. Mm.
Yep, Danny and Erica are here as well from Pupil Services. Okay.
Yeah.
Here,
just as long as you.
Here, bring the one out first. Okay, sorry.
So our update kind of goes straight from your board priorities. We just added the information into it for you, so that you wouldn't have to look. So again, the front page is just the CASEL framework, the Wisconsin SEL framework, and then the sources of strength wheel with your goal. But you have kind of 3 overarching goals within SEL. So that first one talks about incorporating tier 1. So our updates are here in blue. The elementary, that's a 6-day rotation for lessons. So the lessons are taken directly into the classrooms on a rotation. They're using the SSIS curriculum, which we purchased a couple years ago, and all 5 core SEL competencies are built within the framework of that curriculum. And then Sources of Strength is a supplemental curriculum that we use at the elementary level. So it's currently being used in 6 classrooms based upon whole group need and staff capacity. One of the goals of our AODA grant that we got this year is to increase the number of teachers at the elementary level that have been trained in that. So after our district-wide Sources Day, we put out information out to the elementary teachers with interest, hoping to get at least 1 representative per grade level. And there were 14 teachers that came back that were interested. So we're looking at sending 9 into a training that's coming up. The only training that is scheduled nationwide is an online training in February. So I actually have an email out asking if they were going to have any in-person trainings in or around Wisconsin with the next 6 months. I think largely our staff would rather wait for it to be where they could go in person than to do a Zoom training for 2 days.
What's SSIS?
That's the name of the curriculum. It's not short for anything. So it is the tier 1 universal curriculum, but does it stand for
I think it actually
anything?
does. I think it's
I have no
social
idea.
skills intervention system or something.
Yeah, I would have no idea.
But it does.
Just in case
Okay.
anybody was listening.
So I feel confident in saying that's going really well. We have a lot of interest based upon what classroom teachers are seeing when Sources is being used as a supplement as well. And then I'm gonna let Erica and Danny kind of touch on the middle school part.
Yeah, so right now we're doing, for Universal, for the middle school, we're doing the Choose Love curriculum on Wednesdays. Now it's, the biggest part of that Wednesday time is really to build belonging within our students and having an adult that they can trust. So it was kind of nice. I actually did a survey at the beginning of the year with one of the Choose Love lessons. And I was really excited to see that 89.1, now I wish it was 100, but 89.1% of middle school students self-reported feeling connected to at least one adult in the school. So that was really exciting to see that. And they had the option to say, strongly disagree, slightly agree, and strongly agree. So that number is actually the slightly agree, and strongly agree together. So those three. And then we're also doing for middle and high school is the Sources of Strength. So that's really a big part of what we're doing this year. We did highlight on their curriculum because at the middle and the high school level, it's not really a curriculum. It's actually a system that we're putting in place. So yeah, so we had a peer leader training. So that was exciting. We had 54, I think it was about 53 students who attended the training. We brought the national trainer in and really worked with the students about kind of the purpose behind what this is. And then also like, how do we spread the message of hope, health, and strength within our school? And what we know is that peers tend to go to their peers, and so that's a big piece of why we're doing this We did look at some YRBS data and we found that 44% say that they turn to their peers and actually 42% to adults. So I thought that was kind of interesting data to look at. What else? So within our program, we are doing like monthly messaging campaigns. So we have done 3 topics. So what the students decided is they were going to take one part of the wheel for each month. And so we've done some work around healthy activities, positive friends, and then last month was generosity. And then we're moving to mentors this month and then family support next month. And kind of the reason behind that is like, you know, that if we educate students about each of these parts of the wheel, that when they are feeling stressed or have a hard time or they're feeling down, these are areas in their life that they can go to. And we're trying to teach them that and really kind of get that message out there.
So, Danny referenced the YRBS data. The 2023 results are in for high school only. The middle school results have not been released yet. So the graphs that are in here are the high school results only. And when we were putting them together, we have 3 years of YRBS results now, 2019, 2021, and 2023. So we kind of named them pre, during, and post-COVID because we know that COVID shifted things around. So on this, the one here, for goal 1, this is students who on the YRBS data reported that they have at least one teacher or other adult at school to talk to. And so you can see that really was a focus of our mental health grant the last 2 years, and we're above the pre-COVID numbers now. So it's work that we're continuing to do, but I think we're starting to see that in again. So our second goal had to do with student support teams. And making sure that our multi-tiered systems of supports were in place. So one of the big things that we've done the last couple of years is we've implemented a screener. So just for your reference, in 2021-22, there were 0 grades that were screened. Last year, there were 3 grades that were screened. And this year we screened 5 grades, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, and 9th. So all 3 buildings were hit as well. Just a note, the elementary pupil service team, so that's really our school psychologist and the school guidance counselor, are currently working with 71 students, either individually or in small groups. And those groups or individuals have been created from screening results, SST referrals, so that's our student support team referrals, and then grade level teacher input. And then I walked in on Danny and Erica today, and they were talking about middle school groups because their screening results were just done this past month. So, and then do you want to talk? Yeah.
It's Jessica. So what are we screening for in this?
So I'll let them cover the screening because they've done more training on that.
Yeah, and it's really aligned with the CASTLE model. And so it looks at relationship skills, responsible decision making, self-awareness, social awareness, and self-management. And then it looks at internalizing and then externalizing as well. And it gives kind of like a level and then it actually tells you, yes, this is a student you should follow up with. And so it's kind of nice. And the reason it took us a little bit longer to get going is because elementary has the SSIS screener within their curriculum that they use. And for the middle and the high school, we had to pay an extra for it. And we were trying to look at some different screeners, but we did so much work with the Mental Health Academy last year that we're like, gosh, we really just want to go back. We want to use this screener. Because we felt like as a team, and we had a pretty diverse team to work with, that determined this was one of the best screeners to use. So
there was an additional cost that we paid for this year out of the Kids Get Ahead grant that we received last year from the state of Wisconsin. It was a multi-year grant, so we still had about 2/3 of it left. So that paid for this year. It will probably pay potentially for next year, but that will be something that we have to factor in long term if we want to continue to use screeners, which they're providing us a lot of useful information. We'll have to budget into that cost for screeners once that grant is no longer available.
Can you tell me a little bit about what the interventions are like and then how we'll know if we're having success?
So I'm going to defer again, just because it's like Erica's wheelhouse, but I know that they start goals and they're progress monitor, just like any of our academic interventions, but.
Yep. And I can speak to, because I know what Alex and Amy are kind of doing too. So in EduClimber, just like we would use EduClimber for like an academic intervention, if I would say like the student is going, I'm going to use this specific resource to help this student grow so far within their reading, within that comprehension score. And so you would track that and you would create an intervention in there, and then you would progress monitor. Here's my baseline, and here's where we're at week 1, week 2, week 3, whatever, how long it might be. And so it'll look the same way from the behavioral standpoint as well. It can be, honestly, the data for that and the progress monitoring can be a little bit more, not challenging, not difficult. It just can look a little differently because it's so anecdotal, even though you see it. Sometimes it's just that participation, right? So maybe it's just they're present and I'm just needing them to participate in the activities that we're doing. But long term, we're not going to see growth necessarily in behavior that you may see as quickly in academics. So it can be a little bit more challenging to understand that growth, but it'll look the same way. So we'll create an intervention in EduClimber depending on what specifically targeted or what targeted goal they're working towards, and then we'll progress monitor that. And it'll just be, the resource piece is going to be a little bit tricky for us at the elementary because they have the curriculum from SSIS. It automatically will give them like, here's the intervention you should use specifically based on the curriculum, and now you've used the screener. We don't have that at the middle school or high school, so it's a little trickier. So we have to get a little bit more creative in terms of like what resources will we use. We've got some ideas. We have the Y-Try curriculum that we're going to use with a group. We will be using the SSIS screener, although we screen in certain grade levels. Danny and I intend to use it for students who maybe a parent refers them or a teacher refers them through SST or a parent refers them, just to kind of capture a baseline of where they're at right now. So that way we can think, are we trying to build some resiliency skills? Are we trying to build some emotion management skills? What are we doing? So we're not just kind of meeting and hoping and that something's working. So it'll be set up the same way in EduClimber, so you can progress monitor it. So somebody could look back, or I could look back at a student who's maybe a junior and I could see like, oh, in 7th grade, they were in whatever it might be, whether it's academic or behavior. So I can see what things have been done. So it'll be set up the same way in EduClimber.
They will take the SSIS again in the spring, so we can see, and was there some change?
Yeah, it does correlate very well, similar to academics. So they're evidence-based strategies that we're using when we're working with them, and progress monitoring is kept, on a weekly basis, just like we do for academics. It's just the framework of what you choose is it doesn't always like link back to a manual, right? Like it's an evidence-based practice that's proven, but it's maybe not taught from a book so much.
Yes.
And then I was going to have you speak a little bit to your intern.
Sure. Yep. So Mr. Jacob Amenda, he will be with us second semester, primarily focused at the middle school level. He'll be with us 2 days a week. His placement requires him 2 days here and then 2 days he'll be at a different placement at a high school. So he's with us on Mondays and Tuesdays. And so he will be facilitating. We were meeting with him today, talking about like a small group that he may use this Y-Try curriculum with some of our, a small group of students that we're thinking of. There was already a couple of individual students that he'll be working on some specific different things with. So, and then doing some classroom things as well. So yeah, he's the ground running. So he's ready to go. So yeah, we're excited to have him.
And then I know we referenced on their SST. So again, SST is our student services team. Those meet bi-weekly at both buildings. Administration is represented. So the principals are represented. I'm there. And then usually the other members of the pupil service department. If teachers have concerns, social, emotional behavior, academic, just anything, they're allowed, any member of the staff is allowed to put in a referral. So one of the things we worked on last year was creating the same structure and the system of how do you put in a referral. Ours are Google Forms that are available on our website for the teachers. There are 2, and only because one of the questions has a question of something like, what have you tried in the past? And that is kind of different based upon the school. Otherwise, all of the questions are the same. Like one of them has check boxes, like you can check this because I've tried these things. That was a little bit different between elementary and middle high school, but otherwise the questions are exactly the same. Basically, now whenever we have, if, teachers catch myself in the hall or Danny in the hall, we are referring them to that SST referral form so that the procedure is the same. We're still working on some logistics of like how to train that out to all of our staff to make sure everybody's aware. Those are some of the, I would say the structure things that we're still working on. But those referrals come in and we meet bi-weekly, and then essentially somebody on that team becomes a point person to gather more information from the classroom teacher or the other teachers, and then is that liaison to go back and forth so we can just document our interventions that are going on. So we have some better ways to monitor the students that we're working with and talking about. So those can come in any number of ways. Goal 3, we talked about the SHAPE assessment. We're in the process of restructuring our team. So again, we did this work last year. Error on our part, we thought it was by school, so we only had representation for the middle school, high school. It ended up being, it should have been a district representation. And wanting to continue and advance that work, we also noticed that we have a lot of duplicity. So there's an SEL team, there's an SEL team at the elementary, and SEL at the high school. There's this team that was working on the mental health academy stuff. So we've kind of taken all of those and put out some information to teachers saying, instead of having all these separate teams in each building, we're looking to do a K-12 team. I have a list of teachers that have replied interest in that. But one of the things that we want to do is continue working on the work we were doing last year during that mental health academy. And that was primarily on our referral system. So it goes back to our multi-level systems of support, our referral process, the SST teams. How do we monitor? How do we make sure we're collecting evidence? And so that part's going on. And then just kind of an update on you guys always have been really receptive to our staff and funds. But there are things that we know, Ms. Robb is no longer here underneath a grant, which is great that we've kept her on. So just a couple things there. We do have the AODA grant, and we have a McKinney-Vento grant related to students experiencing homelessness. Next, in 2 months, we'll be able to submit a request for aid for school mental health programs, and that funding is only available because Danny holds the school social worker license. It's only for schools that hold a social worker, and it's basically a comparison of costs that we've expended in the 21 fiscal year to the 22 fiscal year, and any change in costs can be reimbursed. I think it's 50% reimbursement in different category areas. So the school bookkeeper and I are working on that. The information is there, but the form's not. So it hasn't been released yet. But there are certain things and activities that we've been doing, like the screeners, that eventually will have a cost associated to them that are currently now being covered from other funds that we get. And then the last goal you had to do with school risk, or the youth risk behavior survey, talking about their sense of belonging. So again, the results from YRBF just were put out in SAFE in December, and only for high school. So we haven't had a lot of time to dig through them. Danny, Erica, and I have gone through them, but we haven't even gotten a chance to take them to the admin team yet. The middle school is not released. Erica was told over Christmas break that they'll be there, and they're still not there. So we don't know when they're coming, but obviously when that data is reviewed, we will share it with the admin team. So we just kind of a buffer there, or a description. Students who feel connected, included, engaged generally do better academically and socially, not shocking to us. Strong school connectedness can also be a buffer against some of those mental health concerns. Teams are reviewing the measures that matter, which Mr. Austin and Ms. Brunson have been working on, and YRBS data about school connectedness, involvement, and attendance. And so we pulled some YRBS data for you, just in the areas of students who self-reported anxiety, depression, self-harm, or suicidal thoughts in the last 12 months. And there's that 3-year comparison as well. Obviously, numbers are still not where we would like them to be, but I think they're all trending in the right direction. And that's good to see. There's not all of them are back to pre-COVID numbers, but they're at least coming back down, which is also what we want. And then on the last page, we just had some ideas for growth that we as a team are continuing to work on. So Danny and Erica, do you guys want to talk a little bit about where we want to continue to work?
Yeah, I can work with that first one. So like the staff development on systems work. So I think a huge goal that's kind of revealed itself through the process of talking about things in building like things around SEL, is really kind of that systems work. And so I think we were unknowingly kind of doing a lot of it and adjusting it without necessarily naming it. So as we think about, we're all using SSIS, right? Like, so it's not the elementary's doing this and then the middle schools and then the high school, we're all using the same system. And it's the same as we talk about like creating a consistent system for the SST referral. So the student support team referral. So the elementary teachers are doing it the same way as the middle and high school teachers are. So I think like we were doing a lot of that systems work without specifically naming it that, but ultimately it's just trying to think about like, let's do things together as a district. We're all talking about sources of strength. We're all talking about mental health and SEL competencies. And so it's really kind of doing a lot of those things. That said, I think what we have to do now is what we realize is when we talk about like systems work, like really what does it mean to be at tier 1? And how do I know if I have a student who I need to refer for tier 2? Right? How do I know that I have a student who maybe needs some more support than what I can provide right in this classroom space? And so I think we're trying to figure out how do we go back to some of those basics and teach some of those things to staff, right? And help them to kind of better ask some of those questions, right? About what do we know, or how do I know if we're getting to a tier 3? And defining some of those rules, right? So after so many, whatever things are happening, that's when I know they go to tier 2 and then they go to tier 3. And really helping our staff to kind of identify that as well.
And I think it seems kind of weird. I think our staff are really adept at that from the academic side because they go to school and they're trained in reading and math and all of those areas. But SEL and the framework of SEL is somewhat new. So I have never met one of our staff who isn't willing to do anything I ask, but I've had several say, I just don't even know what to do. Tell me what I should do. I don't even know what I should do. So they're using evidence-based strategies all the time and they don't even know it. So it's kind of going back now to educate them now that this work is moving forward to show them like, you guys are doing this. You're doing everything you need to. You just don't know the lingo to support what you're doing and saying.
Yeah. And I think too, to that second point, really trying to use our data to make decisions. So we have like factual things that we're making decisions on, not kind of like feelings, right? So whether that's even our pupil services team. So we're saying, yes, this is why we're adding this intervention.
And I think we've been really more explicit. We've had EduClimber, I don't know. I mean, it was here when I got here. So I don't know how long you guys have had it, but like really being explicit, like, no, we're really documenting everything in EduClimber, academic, social emotional learning, behavioral, all of those. So just making sure, again, like the elementary has been good about doing the behaviors for the last couple of years, but middle school, high school was using a different way to do it within Skyward. And the two systems talk to each other, but don't talk in the same language. So we weren't getting a full picture of everything district wide. So again, that's a small tweak that we can make to our systems framework, but a change that we have to make nonetheless. So there are things like that we just have to now get more consistent at and making sure teachers know why we want them to do it, and then giving them the capacity to be able to do it on their own.
Yeah, because ultimately it very much aligns with sources and the premise of sources and getting upstream. So we're not just responding to something that's happening. We're not like, oh, that's happening today, and now we're responding. We're putting all these things. We need to figure out like why and get back here. So that's ultimately kind of that goal, is really what's happening and why, and then how do we add some things on to hopefully support that instead of just responding each initial thing that happens. So trying to get upstream and do some of that prevention work is really a big goal of it.
And then the one other thing that we've talked a lot about, and there's lots of ways, and we've talked about different things, is we just want to make sure that we're always increasing our family engagement opportunities. So there's a lot of research that's done that has showed like elementary families are way more engaged than middle school and high school. And if you think, the reading nights and all the number of people who come to conferences difference of, elementary to middle school, high school. But even just working on our sources work. So one thing that we hope to do is to have a sources night, but have it be open to the community. So like we're going to try and build into our AODA grant budget the opportunity for that, but just trying to think of ways that we can keep our family and our community engaged in the work that we're doing, so that they really feel the partnership with us that our community truly has, and so that we have more resources to tap into when we have questions. So I think we've had a lot of great community partnerships grow over the last couple of years, but those are always things that we're looking to do even more. Questions on anything that we presented?
I have a couple.
Okay.
So first, thank you. It's a lot of information. And
Yeah.
We'll like hear a little bit of the behind the like what you're thinking and how you're thinking about it. Thinking about resources, and you talked a little bit about I heard calibration, I summarized it, but how do we know when and who's something or not something, which is switchiness, emotional or your data? How much time does it take, first of all, to administer the screener? And then what kind of skill set is required to do that? Like, is it do the kids sit down on the laptop and do it, or are you interviewing them? So it's they fill it out very quick. Yeah, like a quick, like.
And it
They
will
follow-
like a
read it
scale,
to them
like
as
a
well.
Hollywood
what they,
kind
you
of
know.
And they follow up with anybody who may potentially have some higher things. They follow up individually then, but the initial screener is done.
Yes. Yep. And essentially it looks like the follow-up oftentimes looks like a little bit of like a test retest. So we usually kind of in a different way. So instead of them doing it on like a computer, right? Maybe we have like posted like cards that have certain prompts on them and our own sort of Likert scale. And we kind of ask them to rate it because we're trying to figure out, like, was it a tough day? Are the scores drastically different from the one they did today?
Was it
And
the
so-
sixth grader who heard Miss Dahl say 14 times that you have to beat a class in 3 minutes, and then they were getting anxiety
Yeah.
because of that, you know, like.
So we do a little test retest to kind of see, and then it allows for some good conversation. So like, tell me about it. So I'm like, oh, you feel sad, you know, like, so just, yeah, so it looks like a lot of individual follow-ups on them.
Got it. So you are the ones who are training to be like, okay, this level of intervention may be necessary. For
Yeah.
So it's not just on the teachers to decide
Correct.
level 1, level 2, or level 3.
Right.
Got it. Okay. And then it's celebration. One last question is what is measures that matter?
So I think Mr. Austin's gonna talk about that, but that's Eric, do you want to say like?
Yeah, I can do that. I can figure out, I'll just give you a little intro to measures that matter.
Jonathan's gonna help me with that one.
So I know you guys haven't heard them talk about portrait of a graduate. Measures that matter is kind of like the correlation that they've made, what they've named it, but we were looking at, like, we kept pulling that up because some of the data they have is like involvement in extracurricular activities or co-curricular activities, or, so we were looking at more than just YRBS. Like, once that is up and going, that's a source of, I can't remember any of the other areas, but like, the number of people in, you know, like out to work, like, there's research that shows, you know, if you have a job in high school, you're more successful post-secondary. Like, we were just kind of pulling in some of those other areas beyond just YRBS.
I think ultimately for us, a state report card doesn't tell the story of our students. And that's where we felt like that doesn't tell who these kids are, right? What are they doing? That's where we kind of created, like, instead of just like, if you don't get a certain score on this report card or like on your ACT that affects our report card, then somehow you're not important. And I think that plays a huge sense of belonging. And we want this school to feel like, if you're not going to college, you're just as important. And so that's where we came up with the measures that matter. So not only are maybe you're college ready, but maybe you're career ready, but maybe ultimately everybody needs to be life ready. And so that's where we're going, like, what are our students doing to just be life ready? In all of those categories. So.
And we were looking at some of those for the connectedness portion
100%.
that they've already put together the numbers for. So we don't want to recreate it.
Definitely cool to see the results from all the hard work you guys are putting in. So definitely appreciate it.
That was.
Yeah.
We're right.
Sorry, Joe.
No, that was gonna be my comment too, was just the data. Thank you for that. So we as a board set this as a priority. We know that means that there will be investment from budget dollars, and having the data to justify that investment, or to say, this is where the money is going and this is how the results that we're seeing, will make that a lot easier for us to continue to fund that going forward, as opposed to say, we know this is right, this feels right. Now we have the data to say we're moving the bar. This is why we need to keep putting our dollars there. I think we were excited to see the 3-year comparison to finally have enough to do. And I think middle school will only be 2. I think they didn't do one in 21. So we'll have like a 18, 19, a 19 and a 23 results when those finally come out. So we don't quite have 3 years of data, but it was nice for us to look at 3 years and just look at for trends and patterns. And
We could pull some because we made our own sort of, because they
That's
weren't
true.
originally registered to take it. So we made our own based on the mental health grant goals that were from Wirebase. So we could pull a few that we would have a longitudinal data split.
Middle school had like the biggest opportunity to kind of help grow, right, compared to the high school.
They've had more explicit instruction. Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions for us?
Thank you so much. This looks amazing.
When can we expect another update?
So we talked about doing it kind of 3 times a year, beginning of the year, mid around this time, and then an end of the year. Like, I think when we were at one of our last mental health academy, we talked about the importance of sharing out the work. So I think in our head, we were thinking towards the end of the year, May or June.
Good.
If they want to come, if I want them to come May, if they want to leave me hang in June.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay, next is food service, potential savings update.
So coming out of one of our committee meetings, we talked about potentially looking at bringing the food service program back in under our roof and being run by the Middle Point School District. And not trying to dig in and spend hours looking at billing cycles and all these kinds of things, just pulling the last 3 months worth of bills, monthly bills. There's the potential for saving in the neighborhood of $4,600 a month. That's basically management fee and general administrative fees. So you put that together over a 9-month time period, and you're talking about a little over $41,000 that could be recouped by the district by pulling that back in. I have been talking to Dr. Jamie Nutter at CISA. He has some retired food service directors that if this is the direction we're going to go, then he and I would meet and interview. We would need somebody that can do our DPI reports and be our food service director of record. Every school district has to have one, and that would be an opportunity for us to pull this back in without maybe necessarily having to hire a food service director, especially if we can't find one. It's a easy fallback. So to say right off the top, we would save all 41,000. I don't know yet. We have not had any conversations around potential costs on a monthly basis. Would we need somebody to be here once a month, twice a month? But that would be something, if this is the direction we're moving forward, it's something that there are avenues for us to reach out and explore.
Can I rephrase that back to make sure I understand? If we could fill the food services director reporting needs for $41,000 or less, it would be a cost neutral decision?
Correct.
Okay.
And I would anticipate it would be or less. I don't anticipate someone needing $4,600 a month if all they're doing is, filing the report, the monthly report, and advising on a menu. I'm thinking, and I will see Dr. Nutter this Friday, weather permitting, and can continue this conversation. But he and I have been engaged for several months now, trying to figure out possibilities for the district.
Would providing a kind of in-house food service program allow us to engage in more kind of farm to table, working with local vendor type food options than we've seen?
Yes, and Taher's been supportive of that. This might give us, we might have more local connections if we have somebody that's more local to us.
Okay.
We certainly, we fill out whatever grants we can get that allow for some of those purchases. You've approved purchase for beef in the past, and you've had some pork. Those are some of the grants that we've been able to get, and those are grants that we've written here as a school. We haven't necessarily needed Taher for those kind of opportunities, so we would not lose out on any of those kinds of things.
What's the timeline, Mitch? Is there a kind of a point where we have to let Taher know if we're moving a different direction, like when we'd have to renew with them?
It would be I would say, we could probably put this as an action item in February to say, this is your direction, is to recapture this and move away from Tahoe. Otherwise, it would be needing to go back to a request for proposal for food service providers. So I would say February is an adequate time.
Any reason not to go this route?
I mean, the school district has run their own food service program in the past. I think we ran into some issues near the end, and was shortly after I came that we didn't have a food service director on staff. And we had to do a contract with Michelle out of the Mount Horeb School District. She was willing to kind of provide that service for us, file our reports. She maybe came once a month just to kind of do a walkthrough, meet with the staff. She prepped the menus, which, once you do it, it can be pretty straightforward. So, I mean, it isn't something we haven't done in the past, both directions, where we've had our own food service director and where we've had to purchase kind of a part-time director as well. So I think it's something that we could do again and bring that back in-house and potentially recapture some of the savings, and maybe we get some price breaks, with some of that localness, and maybe a little more flexibility in our own menu planning that might create some small savings here or there. So we repair all the kitchen equipment. I mean, 99% of the stuff is ours. So I don't see us having to outlay a lot of money just to get it started back up again. It wasn't like we cleaned house and cleaned out the kitchen and sold all of our equipment. We have everything we need to be able to run our own food service program.
Do you have any increased liability or anything like that, running our own food service?
Say no.
And I think you've told us before, but most of the schools in our area have an in-house food service program. Is that correct?
Correct. A lot of the schools in CESA 3 do have their own food service director, run their own programs.
Which, I'm sorry, at the February regular meeting, we will take action on whether to
go out to RFP or
whether or not to go to RFP.
Yeah, and if we're not going to RFP, then that tells me we're taking this on, and when we need to look for, in all earnest, a food service director to run the program.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
For me, this decision is also about the quality of the food. And I think that food is, along with sleep, are the two most important inputs in children's lives. So if we don't save any money, but we increase the quality of nutrition, especially if we're able to also support the local economy, to people that are raising animals or potentially, in the spring and the fall still have potatoes and fruits and vegetables and everything to bring those in. It's a really cool opportunity. And, I'm just scanning at this design thing about the greenhouse. I mean, it's an opportunity for the students themselves to grow their own tomatoes and lettuce and things like that the school could use. So I think that I've not been here to have meals, and my kids do cold lunch, but I haven't heard great things about current quality or kid satisfaction with the hot lunches at the elementary school anyway, which is where my son is. We can just leave it there, Mitch. But so I just see it as an opportunity to maybe help our kids get healthier. And, if they're eating good quality food that doesn't have a lot of sugar in it, they're going to do better in school. They're going to perform better and be able to pay more attention and have less social issues. And that's science. So I'm all for it.
For sure.
You can find the menus online, and it looks similar to, I would say, a tavern menu. There's a lot of days. So I think if we can, do all districts have to use the same formula, calculator, whatever it is for the nutrition?
Yes.
Federal government?
Yes,
There's a lot of different ways to hit those metrics, right?
correct,
And you would have more authority over how we hit those metrics.
correct. Yeah.
So there's room potentially, if there's time to chop in.
I mean, I think if you look at, when you talk about supporting local, you look at the grant we got, then we purchased beef. We also had to get the beef processed. So we're supporting more than one business. Same thing with the pork.
Right.
Also, I mean, you're right. A lot more of that money kind of stays in this area.
Mhm.
And let's face it, sometimes we might get a little bit nicer deal, because it's somebody knowing, hey, the school is buying and it's going to feed students in the school. And, I might get $4 a pound, but I'll sell it to you for $3.50. There might be some of those kinds of things.
There's even interesting opportunities with fair, if that was an option at the county fair where somebody's buying the steer for $2,000 and maybe they don't need the steer, like they could donate it to the school and it's like a win-win-win. So
Will Harris down.
yeah.
Grand Canyon steer.
That was
Well,
really generous.
I have my own steers, Mitch. So if you guys need a steer, I'll just send one up. I'll walk one up for you.
It might
Gotta get some
mysteriously
lamb
end
on
up
it
in our
maybe.
backyard somewhere.
The kids will eat that right up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That are provided to offer certain nutrition.
Right.
Doesn't mean the kids are eating what's
Right.
being put on their plate.
Right.
Cool. Some of the districts I've been at where the students are the most happy with the meals are also the food service programs that have a lot more of those grandmotherly type, you look hungry, just let me, give you a little extra as you go through, which is not according to the standards and guidelines, but I think a lot of times that's what our kids want. If we're having pizza, I don't want anything else. I just want 4 slices of pizza and 2 cartons of milk. That doesn't count as a meal. You have to do a fruit, a veggie, those kinds of, but so sometimes the complaints about food service aren't necessarily the quality. It's just, I don't
Sure.
get exactly what I want
Sure.
as
Makes
much
sense.
as I want, but
Right.
Who's deciding what's quality to you?
Yeah. Yeah. This is like third hand. Great.
Okay, next is the budget update.
What I have through December of 22, we had extended 41.4% of our budget. And through the same time period in this school year in February or December of 23, we were at 38.8% of expenditures. We have talked about a few things. The salary number. We have a placeholder for a potential increase that is in there. So we're about halfway through and we're still sitting very well there. So
just so that I'm clear, you calculated in that 38% for December 23, you calculated as though that additional salary went in,
correct,
even though we didn't actually expend it.
correct.
Got it.
So are you holding that in like an earmarked account or you just
Yes, yeah,
basically?
yeah. We had that surplus. We had to budget that surplus somewhere. That account is still sitting there
Okay.
with that money. That money has not been expended in any way, shape, or form, which would require a budget amendment then at that point in time, if we're going to make any movement there. But we're running in pretty good shape as far as our expenditures are for the year.
Great. Next is the reports from the building administrators. Mr. Ringwell, looks like you're up first.
Okay, so, in February, I'll have more data for STAR testing and fast bridge testing, but I'll share out, this overall. Obviously, each month, each year, we track attendance. Our state report card was 95.4. That September, we were 95.8. October, we were 96.3. November, 95.9. December, we were 94.1. So we kind of look at trends of sicknesses going through the school. About 2 just kind of see, so obviously in the office, we track that and kind of just, reach out to families. If sicknesses go around, obviously we track what's going on from there, but from day to day, but also from month to month, how we're doing otherwise. Overall attendance, from there. The other thing I'm looking at obviously quite a bit is Ed Climber, what Angie talked about a little bit too, is more on the behavior side of like the trends of like in the day, in the week, when's most of the behavior, especially from there of just what I kind of just monitor and kind of look at where do we need to look at to analyze any type of data that looks like, for instance, for me right now, I'm looking at lunchtime and recess are the two biggest areas that pop up in my radar every day. So just trying to look at how do we support that. Obviously, in that whole process, I'm looking at within the playground meetings. I've met with the whole first grade, the whole second grade, some third grade, and I'll get into fourth and fifth as well too. Just kind of see what interest they have. So I have a big slideshow of a bunch of different ideas, things that we might look at incorporating if possible, to kind of help the recess area, but also give students more opportunity outside. Right now, I think in the middle of the grass area, it's really hard based on no snow this time of year. But the grass is gone. It's kind of a little bit of a mud hole. So we try to have a little bit of play area, but it's kind of limited. So again, a lot of it's on the blacktop. We've had some skin knees just because there's gravel on the blacktop. So we're trying to work with the playground area. So you can kind of see sometimes the things pop up. So data for me for right now is just looking at where do we need to help support a day-to-day process. Some things that down the road, like what we're looking to need, and Angie can kind of step in here as well too, is the ESL teachers. So we have it since the start of the school year. We've had four, five.
So we started the year with one student identified as an English learner.
Yeah.
We now have 5.
Yeah. So when a new student starts, awesome, but that also puts a lot on staff trying to help support, and even that reaching out to families to help support that communication from there. So it does take a lot to take depending on what level they're at. From there, it also helps too. I think like I know our one first grade student from Ukraine is amazing, really quick transition. But it's not always that case. And sometimes just the support of the teacher and staff trying to help support that transfer of document information to the students. It does take a lot of time and effort.
So I kind of put some things down because I knew Tom was talking about it. So again, we went from 1 to 5, 4 at the elementary school, 1 at the middle school. The 4 that we've gotten are all new to the country. So their knowledge of English is pretty limited. The one that we had last year is a unique situation because he's an English language learner, but living here with dad is English speaking. It's more about how he was brought up in his younger years of why he's identified. So his English is very conversational. He's really close to no longer being an English language student. But just some things that, I think we should be aware of. So we technically don't have an ESL program. So the state has this thing called language instruction educational programs. And when we enroll somebody, we have to mark that they're not enrolled in a program because they have no contact with a teacher who is bilingual certification or a license to teach ESL. And so we're supporting those students using our reading specialists through Title I and providing them some individual instruction and gaining English exposure. So I think they're doing phenomenal, and we've tried to give them the resources they need to do that, but that's not their training. And I think working with somebody in a different language is probably a whole different training mentality than working somebody in a reading program. Our Spanish teacher, thankfully, has jumped in twice now to do some calls for parents for me. One day gave up his lunch because it was a new student and I had no other way to talk to the family. We've had several community members that have donated, and I've paid them, but have given their time to come in and translate for us. We have one contact who has come in and interpreted at multiple IEP meetings for us with the family. But just even the phone calls, plans and meetings, I'm running them all. Translation. So like today I spent 20 minutes translating a PDF that had to go home, and we found that Canva translates well, but it's still, somebody has to do that. I let the teachers know that if you need help planning, please come to me, but really it's come back to the teacher. So there's no, they haven't really taken ownership of that. When we first get students, we have to screen them. I had to take 10 different certifications in order to screen our students. And then I have to take 10 more certifications in order to give them the state assessment. Because we have a student with a fairly significant cognitive disability. His is a whole nother set of training plus our normal ones. And it will be probably a whole week of me giving the tests for the state assessments to our EL students. So just like the resources, they're getting done, but that pulls me away from other things that I need to do. I kind of briefly looked, I know Mr. Austin and I have talked about this, and this is not my expertise, Mitch has weighed in. What I could find is if we have 10 students of the same language at the K-3 level, we are required to have a bilingual, bicultural language program, and we have to submit that plan with the state. So that's the number that I found. Mr. Austin had thought it was 7 at some point. I can't find that. What I can find is if we get to 10 at the K-3 level, you have to have a plan. 20 of the same language too, yes. 20 and above, 20 or more at the fourth grade and up. You must have a plan. So we currently do have 2 languages. 4 of the 5 speak Spanish, 1 speaks Ukraine. And I think your point of like the parents' knowledge of English too has been different for each student. So one of our families doesn't speak any English and only speaks in Spanish. And the other one, they're very, conversational and fluent in English and can take our, whatever gets sent home communication wise. Joelle's done great work, and we're able, anything that gets sent out through Skyward can be transposed. She has it set up there. All the phone calls that go out, the robophone calls are transposed. Our website can be transposed into Spanish, except for attachments within the website. So we're definitely learning as we go. One of our districts to the, whatever direction that is, east of us, has been very helpful. They've answered all the questions that we've had, and are willing to help answer any other questions that we have, but we're just kind of learning I feel like we're constructing it as the airplane's moving because they're here. From my understanding, I think about 50% of the students that we have, their parents work for 2 companies in this community. And those companies are relocating some of their workers to us. So I don't think this is going to be the stop of our enrolling students with English language needs. Just because those two businesses are very large employers in our community.
That kind of leads into my question, which would be, can we start the process of developing a formal language program plan as if we had 10 and had to do it? I'm not saying we have it done by next week, but
right. I don't know what it looks like. I really have to even look. I'm assuming the state has some sort of something that you have to submit when it comes to the time, but right. I think it's at least good for us to look at the framework of what's in there. So we start thinking about the components of what that means. But I and not to complain, but just I think of all the things that I do now that if we had a person who could do that and could do it better than me, thankfully I'm pretty fluent at reading Spanish. I took a number of years in it and it's my minor. I'm not as conversational anymore. But at least if I translate and I go to Google Translate, I can read it and know if it makes sense or not. But those are all just times of things. But yeah, I don't know what's in the framework of those programs. I think that's something we could look at. And I think that too comes down to you guys of, do we want to wait until we get 10 and we're told we have to, right? Because we've always been proactive in making sure we do what's best for our students here.
Would it be a reasonable goal to have a plan put together and ready to go for the fall?
I think so.
To have something maybe presented to the board this summer, so that
Yeah,
Kind of a
and-
more organized process for the next school
Yeah,
year.
and I think just, and not to leave Matt and Brooke out of it, just the majority of our students have been at the
Sure.
elementary level. The one at the middle school is a whole separate kind of scenario, and he's being monitored through his IEP, but, we've talked and just as potential staffing needs, something that you guys are thinking about as we come into it. I don't know what that looks like. Maybe it's not full-time, maybe it's part-time, maybe it is full-time. I don't know, but I think it's one of those areas where we have a gap right now. And we have people filling in who are doing the best they can.
Is this an opportunity for us to consider partnering with another district nearby who might have, maybe they have one person on staff who's underutilized, or one person on staff and could use a part of a second person and do something like, was it a 1065?
6:30.
6630.
That was
Thank you.
Mr. Wainwright and I.
I wasn't even close.
Yeah, no, Mr. Wainwright and I did discuss that because there are a number of districts around us who have had a growing population for a few years and do have, I think Darlington has, I think right now. I think they added a fourth this year.
And they're trying to hire another.
And I know.
They have a very.
They have a full.
And I know Belmont just hired one last year, and I don't know if theirs is full-time or part-time. It might have only been half.
It would be
I don't know
fantastic
what
if we could
Shellsburg was
collaborate.
moving towards that when I left. I don't know what they have for sure, but
Would be a convenient partner for.
yeah, but I think there is the potential for other districts around that. I do know that, I don't know what Platteville has, but I know they have some. I
They
don't-
have,
One for sure, I'm sure.
I think
Yeah.
also conversations with the two businesses that we're aware of, just to kind of, what kind of plans do you have?
Right.
Because we want to try to be open and receptive to you bringing in employees. We want to try to be able to create an environment that those employees' children feel welcome and have a connection. So I think
And I-
there are several conversations we would need to have.
And I think you've spoken with Mr. Nutter at CISA about even maybe CISA would be interested in potentially exploring hosting, and we could. So if it's not a full-time person we need, or a 50% or a full, maybe it is a full-time, but that they would maybe host it. They host a lot of those other kind of like, I need to fill, not a lot of, nobody needs a full-time, type situation. And I think Mitch has talked to Jamie about that a couple of times as well.
Yep.
And I don't know if that's going anywhere, but at least we're kind of putting the word out there.
So I'm sorry, go ahead. You said Aaron asked if it would be possible to have something by August, and you said yes, that would be okay.
Yes.
So my follow-up question to that is what kind of support would be useful? Just I keep thinking about capacity every time we hear about students with IEPs and the needs and the growing numbers of students and the numbers of students with English as a second language and all these different pieces. What's a reasonable support that you might need to be able to create a plan for imagining that we had 10 students?
So I'm going to say I'm going to devote some of those extra. So my contract is 210 days. So I work about 20 days more than the rest of the teachers by contract. And I usually work more than that. But after about the second week of June, my special ed responsibilities are kind of done for that's all kind of, I can push off to the side until August. Our rollover doesn't happen until July, so I can't really do anything within our IP things and case managements and those things until after July. So I usually have some time. And like Mr. Ingwell's, it's his first year, obviously, but I know Mr. Austin, once finals are out and grades are out and we have summer school set up, he's able to collaborate and work on those things too. So some of those bigger projects we do intentionally put off until the summer. And then we can also devote our time to it and not get interrupted.
If we want to consider this for meeting that need for the 24-25 school year, is the August timeframe reasonable, or do we need to move that back?
I would say I could try and have you something by July for sure. I don't know that I can guarantee June, but I feel like I could get you something for July for sure.
I'm just thinking if we don't post something
No,
until
I
the second week of
agree.
August, there's not a very strong chance we'd have anything in
And
place.
from my
before
knowledge
October.
of the framework, just thinking of other plans that I've had to submit, title plans or what, it really doesn't have anything to do with staffing. It's more a description of like accessibility and referrals and screening and procedural things that are usually more of the plan, not so much that we're going to have a person. So I think like the potential of hiring somebody can continue without necessarily knowing that we're going to put a plan in place. I think that the framework of the plan just helps us think of like, oh, I never thought about this component of it. And it also probably explains a little more like, I know if there is a plan in place, there's a different source of funding available. So like right now, our Title III dollars just go over to, CESA 3. And I don't know if that plan in place, does that mean our dollars come back to us or like those types of situations? When you click on the thing, there's, state aid eligibility and there's like 4 or 5 different things. Some of them we already use and others maybe would be open once that plan was in, if that plan was in place. And I don't know if you can submit a plan if you don't have that threshold, like from what I could see, it's a must if you have that threshold. I don't know if you can elect to because you're trending towards that threshold,
I don't really care if the DPI has our
Right.
plan. We want the plan,
Right.
right? It's for our own kids.
Yeah.
So whether the DPI will accept it or not, I think is irrelevant. I think the key is how do we best help these kids in the district? And I think the quicker we can have an organized process together. I mean, that is the airplane that you're building.
Yeah.
Right. And I think you're going to find once you look at the framework, you're like, oh, we've already done some of this,
No,
done some of that, and done some of that.
I agree.
We had to, right?
And I think like we always strive for best practices. And like I said, Darlington's been great. I think even our first one, I called somebody who I knew there and said, I don't know if you're the person, but I know you've been there long enough that you were there at the beginning of this. Like, how did you even start? So, if you've been in the elementary school, we have signage and Spanish, English, and Ukrainian to try and identify everything. That was one of their first things that they shared with us. So, and like I said, we've had a lot of community members step up and offer help. And we've been able to utilize some of them, but like the logistics of that being something that we can continue forever, I just don't know how feasible that is.
I'll probably paint a picture of that tipping point too,
Mhm.
where you're like, oh, when this starts to happen, there's no way we can keep floating without a staff. Then we'll know when that.
And I think for me, it largely comes back, because Tom and I can, we'll put in the time we need to, but it largely comes back to that classroom teacher who's trying to plan for how to support that student, and that's not their knowledge base, So thankfully, technology has been amazing as a tool for us to communicate, but like I just know our teachers want to do what's best, and that is putting a lot on them to take that ownership of that communication. So
Use a lot of Google Translate on iPads, even with one of the parents. I walked one student home because they couldn't get on the bus or get off the bus in the right spot. So translate at the home. My Spanish is not very good at this point yet, but Google Translate was able to communicate easily. So it's really helpful that route for this technology. So it's great.
What else you got?
I know.
Thank you, Angie.
Overall, in the elementary school, I know we're trying to create additional sensory spots. OT, PT, their room upstairs is pretty small. We're trying to create a different swing spot. So there are some moving pieces that we're trying to get better situated to allow students to have different areas to go. So if you have been in the elementary lately, Dan and Dave and I moved some of the cubbies to create additional spaces downstairs by the kindergarten space, which is kind of great because it actually allows for pre-K and kindergarten, especially in Ms. McDonald's class, to have better supervision by their classrooms instead of around the corner. So we moved that over Christmas break, and I have a few more. Might actually move tomorrow, just to kind of help create spaces. Some spots are getting overwhelmed based on sensory, and so we're trying to create additional spaces for students that want those areas to be available. So it's just kind of looking what we have based on the renovation and everything else. Now try to be creative on what's available in the school itself. What's going well? So again, like I said, we're going through the playground meetings. I'll do more this week and next week, just kind of get student feedback, and then kind of get to narrow down. I'm trying to create a 3D model that I'll share back out with the students again, to kind of look at, here's what we're looking at based on their feedback to me. All those are great because they just have ideas and ideas and ideas. What about this? What about this? So it's really kind of fun to see their thoughts and ideas. And then hopefully we'll be able to put a 3D model with one of the companies that we're working with to kind of look at more of a finalized, here's what it could look like. So those are great. Overall, I said staff morale is, I think, has been really up this year. Collaboration between grade level teams across the board has been up. So it's really kind of been fun to kind of see that work within school there from there. Source of strength has been a big asset of just kind of coming in. I know Ms. McDaniel's been teaching a lot. Classroom teachers are starting to teach more source of strength, which is great. And I think overall, I think students, I feel like they're appreciated and valued and cared for throughout the day. A lot of smiles, a lot of high fives, a lot more just positive atmosphere across the board. So that's kind of where I feel like we're at from there. Like I said, the only big thing for improvement wise, I'm looking at just recess area and just kind of looking at how can we create a more positive opportunity outside. I think with the amount of snow we'll get, really kind of creates a lot more play areas. So it'll be kind of fun to have outside recess with the snow area. So it usually creates a lot more fun areas to play with.
Way to put a positive spin on that.
Snow is always awesome at elementary. Like it is the best. So we've kind of been lacking snow, so it'll help. Kids Club. Well, I did talk to Mo a few times now over the last couple weeks. I know currently we've hardly used any of the grant money. So we are financially in a really good spot from there. So again, we reduced down to 2 staff and kind of added a few possible, like, so we have a couple high school students subbing in here and there, which is great for opportunity for them. But we really aren't using any money, which is really good for long-term wise. As we look into the summer is going to be a challenge. One is Mo and Brooke both work during the day. So any type of longer duration of time is really not doable at this point from there.
With your current staff.
With our current staff. Because again, they work during the day. So again, the current schedule we have works in their schedule. So it's really a positive. But to extend Kids Club during the day at all for summer, at this point, time would be impossible for them. I know we haven't really set summer school schedule wise. I know typically in the past we've gone 8 to 11. Again, I haven't really looked, and then Mr. Austin will look at that more to see what this summer looks like. There's a possible opportunity for that to, based on our summer school, of how that would fit with the Kids Club. Beyond that, it's a hard time seeing any type of length of Kids Club offered from there. Because one is obviously staffing, 2 is during the summer we're doing a lot of cleaning within the school, so just rooms available would be limited as well too. So when you throw all that on there, it's a challenge to have the opportunity to extend Kids Club into the summer at this point, just based on what Mo and I talked about.
That's within the existing structure and building and system.
Correct. I know there was some feedback from the emails coming through of just wanting to look at that. Beyond that, like I said, I've talked to Mitchell a bit about it as well too. I'm like, it's a challenge. Try to see if we can extend based on staffing currently.
It sounds like probably the approach we should take is not extending, but creating new. You know, it's like it's its own thing.
Mhm.
You know, the summer Kids Club is its own entity, you know. So maybe we could look at it through those lenses rather than, you know, the current Kids Club staff. Maybe we could start with surveying the current Kids Club parents and see if they have a need for summer childcare, and if so, you know,
And we can look
if and when, and just see what the demand is. You
I know
know, because if it's just 3 kids versus 30 kids, you know.
I would say though, just doing the Kids Club parents is gonna take out a whole chunk of parents who might engage if it was an all day summer thing like that.
Mhm.
You don't wanna limit the,
Will you survey?
Yeah, I would do it school-wide.
For sure.
Maybe say like, here's what Dodgeville does, and is there interest in something like this? Then figure out how you would make that work,
Mhm.
what it would cost.
Mhm.
Just with that would be the timeline of getting feedback, but also summer's gonna be here before you know it.
How does Dodgeville do it? Did they start with like a nonprofit who built it or did like an actress?
They didn't start with a nonprofit. They just brought it into the school.
Then they staffed it internally.
In essence, they hired people to staff it.
Mhm.
Food service would be involved too, because you gotta feed them.
Mhm.
Was it the current Mo and Brooke could not do any extended period set?
I understand that.
Some kids wouldn't have a summer break then.
Well, it wouldn't be
Summer.
summer school all summer. It would be after school. It would, right, but,
Richmond.
right, it's not school.
I think the issue is that there's not a lot of childcare options in Mineral Point anymore, and this is a problem around the state of Wisconsin and in the United States. And so my understanding of why we did the Pointers Kids Club was to try to offer a solution to families in Mineral Point who are having a very difficult time with mom and dad working, and arranging childcare, because there's just not a lot of options available. Like a lot of people moved, a lot of people retired from the childcare industry. And I guess the question is, I'm hearing reluctance on the part of the administration, which is fine. But the question to the board is, how involved do we want to be in the sort of everyday post-school lives of families that we serve, during the school year, which we're obviously committed to. And I got the email, in question as well. And I've been thinking about that question myself. Like, do we want to be involved in the summertime or not? But it hurts to send out a survey, and to see how big of a problem it is in the summer or not. And to just talk about it. It doesn't mean we have to commit to it. I was on summer crew for 2 years here in the schools, so I know that you're using part of the schools, are already clean and done, and you can use those parts, and then others aren't. I know how that whole thing goes, but the whole school doesn't shut down, during that time. But we've got a summer crew problem, that we haven't been able to attract kids to be on summer crew, so we've had, staff and young kids of staff. That used to be a really attractive job. And it's been hard to find kids to work in those things. And I imagine that we would want to be hiring students for this. When I thought about it, the students seem like a good population to pull from for a summer camp type thing. You don't need teachers necessarily, but staffing may be a challenge, but we can ask if there's sort of a demand there and then put it out. If we can't find people, we can't find people, and we can tell community members that,
I just think, we've got enough parents asking about it that I think we owe it to them to say, okay, we've thoroughly assessed the situation. What's the demand for it? What would a program look like? Would it be like Dodgeville's? How much would it cost the district? Do we have the staff to take this on, or can we hire the staff to take this on? Do we want to take this on administratively, legally, and really have, that kind of conversation? And if we end up as a group, a board, administration saying this is really not a good idea for these reasons, then I can live with that. But I think it deserves a thorough look,
Doing a survey, I think, would give us feedback of where we at community wise.
Mm-hmm.
Because the need for support doesn't stop just because the school calendar does.
Actually increases.
It increases. There's not a lot for kids to do around here in the summer. So for myself, I really appreciated the camps that were provided this year in addition to the summer school. But yeah, I think that like maybe some kind of wraparound would be really helpful.
Mitch, do you know if is the Dodgeville Summer Kids Club, is that open to anyone who's willing to pay money to send their kid? Or you have to be in
I
the
don't think
Dodgeville
so.
School District?
I think you have to be a
Yeah.
Dodgeville School
Yeah.
District
Okay.
resident.
I figured, but I just thought I would ask.
Would we entertain asking if we could, Peck and Dodgeville both have great summer programs, if we could look at providing transportation? Get your kid to school here by 7:30 and we'll get them on a bus and transport them safely to participate in one of those schools' programs. I realize that's maybe not the direction we had wanted to go, but I am very concerned about staffing. I know we've had a hard time staffing summer school programs that are only a couple weeks long. I don't know how we're gonna get people to staff a whole summer.
Right, and if we hit that wall, then we're stuck, but,
Could use what somebody else
we're
is
not quite
doing.
there yet to even, we haven't even
Yep.
tried,
Sure.
Right.
I suppose long-term, we could maybe explore something with the city to do some kind of, Parks and Rec related, non-school affiliated summer camp, but I don't see that happening between now and this summer, but that's just a thought, because to Will's point, do we want to take this on as a school district for a summer program? I think you could make an argument either way, but it does feel like people are looking to us to solve some childcare issues in the community.
If we're able to.
If we're
I'm
able
not
to.
sold on it either, Tom. I'm not sure if that's our role, but we can ask. At least start by asking what the demand would be.
Okay,
Go ahead.
yeah, that's good. Thank you. I guess I'm thinking timeline. How long do you think it would take to put together a survey?
This would Joelle share that out?
Yes.
Is it to all community members or to parents who are currently using the,
Parents of elementary school age
of
kids.
all elementary school age
Yeah.
kids? Okay.
I would say K-4.
Not bad. Going to middle school next year.
Mm.
K or pre-K?
Pre-K.
Pre-K.
I think pre-K 5.
Pre-K-5.
At the February regular meeting?
Is that possible? Are they back?
That might be. I could talk to Joelle. I mean, next week she'll be busy for a few days, but,
Would you like me to reach out to the parents who helped with the kids club to see if they would like to work on a survey? I can do
Sure.
that. I mean, I don't know what their capacity is. I'll send them an email and just say, kind of like a mid-year survey, how are things going? And would you be interested in summer school and that kind of thing?
Well, it needs to be for all elementary school kids, so it needs to just be
Yeah.
for summer school, for summer camp.
Oh,
Yeah, so it's probably two different surveys. Do you want to survey
What's going?
the kids club families? How is it going for your kids enrolled in kids club? And then a separate survey would be to all families, right? All elementary school families.
that would be easier for us to send out through Skyward.
Yeah, to connect Joelle with that group to finalize something for her to send out.
Okay, I'll reach out to the parents.
Oh, thanks. Thanks, Tom.
Thank you.
Mitch, do you think you could reach out to those two businesses in town about how many immigrant families they're planning on bringing, maybe before our strategic board planning stuff after the school board convention? So that we could have that data, so when we're talking about strategic planning. I don't know if that's a little tight. If not, then maybe February.
I can certainly contact them. I don't know.
Yeah, they'll
But
reply.
I will certainly try to get information before.
Okay.
that.
Appreciate it.
Yep.
I imagine. I know Cummins is one of them, but.
And I guess it doesn't really matter. I'm just curious. I'm asking out of curiosity.
Yeah.
Okay. Mr. Austin, looks like you're presenting for both middle and
Yep.
high school today.
Yep.
Okay.
I told Miss McGraw I think I could handle this one, so she trusted me.
Okay.
So just looking at it, I want to say, thing that went really well, and I think and Angie would echo this here too, and anybody, right before break, we had a sources of strength activity where we brought literally the entire elementary up here. They did some different activities. We did a little pep rally. I sent them back before Christmas break. It was awesome. If you saw the pictures on Facebook, it was way more incredible when you were here looking at them and watching our kids become leaders. And that's where Brooke kind of made a mention here too. We really put middle school kids in a leadership position, and she really appreciated that from her standpoint. And so the students really appreciated that experience too. I thought it was awesome. Just trying to get around to places and watching them do things. It was really cool to see this kid laying next to this kid and they're talking and coloring on the same sheet, and you just great connections. So that was really, really cool. Other things that are going well here, ELA teachers continuing on that common formative assessments, looking at those target goals that Brooke shared early on. We have STAR testing coming up here, so we'll know a little bit more about that. And those where we stand with that stuff here next month. So those are the goals we're tracking. Middle school is also using Choose Love for their homeroom lessons. This month they're focusing on gratitude. So really helping kids practice gratitude, how to notice more positive things, and it's just a good reminder for everybody. So that's what they're working on there. Areas of improvement. As we're working through those common formative assessments, looking at different skills, definitely seeing some gaps in early in literacy here. So we're working on those. The toughest part there is finding time and people to support those areas. So last year, Ms. McGraw served in the capacity as a interventionist. That may be something we will be bringing back to you guys moving forward, just as somebody to help with reading, math, so on, with some of those kids, because we are seeing those gaps. And I don't think it's anybody's secret that those gaps are still existing. We just don't have necessarily the person that is looking at that. And I think we talked about that. Ms. Dahl brought that up last year too, at the middle school, high school level, having some more interventionists or somebody to kind of take more on that role. Continuing to look at math curriculum. We had a long conversation today about it. So we're looking at reviewing that. We are probably going to be piloting in the middle school, the newest version of Big Ideas here for the spring. Working through that though, as we go. That's what we previously had. We're going to keep looking at that. Questions on the middle school? How did it was under 3 minutes?
Yeah, it was good. Good job.
Perfect. Again, sources, phenomenal. At the high school level, so we're just getting into ACT boot camp. We took that before break. We're breaking them up. We'll start boot camp here in probably right after the next board meeting on a 4-week process where we kind of teach them their skills at their level to increase it. ACT's coming up in March. It's hard to believe that we're at that time already. So that's kind of where we're at there. Things are going well. It's been a really positive and fun year. It doesn't feel like it should be January, but it's been really positive and fun. One of the things, pass these from they are big, mainly because I circle and highlight a lot of things as I go through and look at these.
Chuck E. Cheese.
Yeah.
So one of the things that we talked about last year was Portrait of a Graduate, future ready data. Instead of going with the Portrait of a Graduate, we decided to go and jump on the future ready group over at CISA. I talked briefly about that, I think, in December, but we joined in on that. One of the things they're looking at is future ready, which is career and college readiness. From that, and I can say now we are probably ahead of the game where other schools are at in that sense with this, because this is really what they're trying to work towards. We had some framework of this built, so I was collecting some of that data. We had talked about some of that data. We added more to it, but we changed it more to measures that matter. As Ms. Brunson said, there's really 3 big key areas: life ready, career ready, college ready. Not every kid's going to go to college, and that's okay, but we can help make sure they're ready for their career or that they're life ready. So it's really focusing on
what are the things that we want to look at and what are the skills we want to continue to build that aren't necessarily on the state report card. But it looks at the different areas. We also pulled in around the career fair, they did a career skills assessment results, really looking and reflecting on themselves. And actually, so one of them on there, if you look, is I think it's our lowest one, is staying calm when I feel stressed. So I think that's a pretty good thing that we're doing sources of strength, so we know where to pull from when we talk about those things. But I thought that was really neat when we saw that data point come out and we're like, oh, look, that kind of reassures us that yes, we need to continue doing those things. But some good information on here, still digging through the past stuff. But this is definitely a good start to something that eventually I'd like to get pushed out to the public and they can kind of see. So we also have the career clusters interests. That was also part of that survey, so we could kind of tell where kids are. But there might be things that you guys are like, hey, you might want to track this. There's no right or wrong answer. It's more of school specific or district specific. What do we want to look at to move forward? And we've had some very brief conversations about what does this look like at the middle school level? What does this look like at the elementary level? And very brief, by brief, Tom and I, we talked about it here before the meeting. But Brooke and I have talked a little bit about it because we did go over to CISA together with Ms. Brunson to kind of look at that day. There's some different models. This is where we kind of went, the direction we went. So
Are these like actual figures?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Any number on here is our actual data. Yes. The blank spots are the ones that I don't have fully calculated.
You have like goals for each? I think this is awesome.
We haven't got that far yet.
Okay.
Our next meeting's in February. No,
Just
I think there needs to be goals.
Yeah.
I know, and it's probably I won't be able to find it. One of the goals, and it probably actually doesn't show up on here. So we turn in our youth apprenticeships, our CTE credentials earned every summer. That's how we are able to get some stuff within there's that. It also is youth apprenticeship, and there's a couple other ones too. The state will give up some money back that way. As we're digging more into it, we're finding there's more ways to get those credentials done. So some of the conversations Erica and I have had are around how do we make sure that 95% of the senior class is earning a credential? Because it could be in Adobe products, it could be in as a CDL, a CNA, if they do a youth apprenticeship, but trying to really bump that number up. So instead of turning in this last year, we turned in 32, I think it was the 32 students. How do we turn in 55 or 95% of that senior class? Because there's no reason to not, especially when they're earning something that will help them for the future.
And you said the state gives money back for that?
So it's a career technical incentive grant.
Okay. How much are we talking per credential?
It's not, so it's per student. You can only count a student once.
Okay.
So we have turned in students multiple times, but we only get to count them once. Not happy when I figured that out. The youth apprenticeship is up to $1,000. The CNAs are somewhere in there, but some of the credentials are a little bit varied, I think.
Okay.
But it's up to $1,000. The last couple of years, it's been around $700. Okay.
Okay.
Next year, we're looking at a good chunk of change to put back into our CTE programs that'll really help. We've spent some of that money on programming on during COVID, the ticket booths out there. So materials for classes, that money to pay for those ticket booths for our construction kids to learn how to do it because you couldn't afford to buy wood at that time. We were able to purchase the materials for those kids to learn how to build those things. So just things like that. But next year we're looking at a pretty good chunk, I'm not gonna lie, which is helpful.
I have a question. So the job shadows, vendors at the career fair, career related field trips, all of that, how do those match up with the percentages down here in the clusters?
That was a great question. I don't have an answer for it.
Okay.
I'm not gonna lie, yeah.
I was just wondering, yeah, relatedly,
Oh, yeah.
like in terms of these job clusters, this goes back to the question I asked probably every time.
It's all
Sorry.
good. Yep.
Sorry, not sorry?
Yeah, I was waiting for you to bring
Not
that up.
sorry. Thanks.
Yeah, what we got?
Unpredictable. Like when I look at these things, like what do we
Mhm.
offer kids in health science? So to the point about like how are these career activities related, or what about AP and dual enrollment classes that we offer that map onto the things that they're interested in? Feels like a data point that, as you set your goals, feels like a relevant goal setting metric. Like
how do we
18.5
guide,
in health science.
how do we
Yeah.
guide the
13.5 in human
interests of the
services.
students? But how do we guide our programming of classes offered to the career interests of the students?
I think a lot of it's just really digging into what does it look like if we're talking about manufacturing? How do we make sure we give kids that would like that experience, some sort of experience in that way?
You attended that manufacturing academy. We have a construction academy.
Yeah.
CISA is looking at putting together a manufacturing academy.
CISA would like us to host the next manufacturing academy.
So sometimes it isn't simply, oh, Rachel's interested in hospitality, so we're going to create a class for, but we through the guidance department, hey, here's opportunities that fit in this career cluster that you've expressed an interest in. A lot of those kinds of things do happen. And this class would be great for you to take now, and then that opens the door here, or I can put you in touch with somebody. So a lot of those things are happening.
I do know when we look at these career clusters, Miss Brunson is trying to hit all those to begin with when she brings in those, like the career speakers or the vendors at the career fair. She wants to make sure she's got a good representation of each one of those. We are in the process of setting up field trips for March 12th, which way sooner than I think it is, for the underclassmen, because that is the ACT day, right? So we're looking at those sorts of things too, to make sure we give them the experiences. Last year, we took all juniors and seniors through, they went to either Epic, Vortex, lighting company. I can't think of it, up in Madison. They were awesome.
Electronic theater controls.
Yeah, sorry. Musco Lighting's our lights out there. But just some different various things. We were working with Exact Sciences. Hopefully we get to get up there this year. But this year we have some seats at Southwest Tech already for that day for kids to go and explore and just trying to set up those experiences. The job shadows were part of personal finance. So most kids should be hitting those, and we're actually going to restructure that we encourage them to do one a year. That's high school kids. Yeah.
In the Life Ready section, it says that in order to meet the percentage, they have to have a 90% attendance rate in 3 of the indicators. So the indicators around taking Algebra 2 or an AP class or participating in youth apprenticeship, those are all pretty straightforward. But what about, do they meet one of those 3 if they have gone on a career related field trip, or if they listen to a career speaker, or is that
working on those things?
I
have a separate spreadsheet that's got every kid's name on it. It's got all these listed. So then basically they get a point total.
Okay.
That's really how we get that. Most kids are hitting a lot higher than 3 of those activities across the board. Because even like the vendors at the career fair, well, that doesn't really count towards
that
kid,
shouldn't.
right? But making sure you go on the job shadows, or you hit the attendance rate, and you're involved in a couple your co-curricular, or so trying to really look at that. I'm not saying 3 is the right number there.
Okay.
Most things you look at are career and college ready. They don't have a life section. This was Miss Brunson and I, we talked a lot. And we're like, we really want to tease that out, because I think we want to make sure every kid's life ready. Some kids are going to pick college career ready, but it might be both, and that's okay.
Personal finance and some of those life skills, those are now required to graduate, right?
And we've had them required to graduate.
Okay. So that's
So
already,
by the
we don't
state-
even need to list that because
By the
it's part of what
state,
we do.
it is going to be required by the state. 2025.
I believe 25, yes.
But we have had it required
For years.
Prior to my arrival, personal finance has been a required class.
This is really cool to look at.
Start.
Yeah.
We got a lot of digging through yet.
But I'm telling you though, this is worth the effort, the time, expense. This is one of the most impressive, probably one of the most impactful things for the district I've seen in my entire time on the school.
We put a lot of time.
Thank
into
you
it.
for that.
So well-
It's your big
Seriously.
question.
And I know you're still in the like, how do I organize it and how do I collect the data and how do I make it all work? And then we get to, okay, now that we have the data, what does it all mean and how do we want to?
Well, eventually,
But this is,
and hopefully,
a really
eventually
great
this leads
start.
us to those, here are the skills we want. The portrait of a graduate or portrait of a player.
yes,
We want them to have this, we want them to have this, but this is the starting point that CISA wanted us to start at. We are not supposed to have this ready by February, but I couldn't really wait because I already had information collected. So I'm like, well, we're gonna start putting it together. So
Well,
this is where we're at. So
I love like when I think about my obsession with like, are we actually preparing kids for the world?
Yep.
And we know that we don't know what those careers are actually gonna look like. There's no, I mean, I don't know how much AI is impacting you all, but it is in my everyday. And I'm not even a tech person. Like I can barely use my own phone. It is a huge part of like, we don't know, like the trajectory of change is faster than humanity has ever experienced. Not to be over dramatic. I can't help it.
we wanted to really be intentional on how we laid this out too.
Oh yeah, one. Please, Mary, be nice.
I think this also comes
helpful.
back to what Ms. Brunson had said earlier about a student who says, I have no interest in going to Southwest Tech or a four-year program. We want to provide that open door opportunity. This helps us that we can demonstrate you have the skills to go from here to this job. We've provided you opportunities. We've provided training, in life skills. Yes, every student that comes through here is an important person to us. And this helps, I think, solidify that on paper to people and say, look, these are things that are important to this school district above and beyond the ACT test, because there's so much more to a student than that score.
love it.
So, bravo.
Well done.
With that part. So, just so you're aware.
When we're like, to break down everything you're already doing.
Oh my gosh. This took a while.
Remember like, right.
Yeah, but this looks a lot better than the spreadsheet.
This is excellent. I'm telling you,
Look
this
how
is
happy
really
you've made Dr. Dunn.
I've just made his year. It's fantastic.
I,
There's probably a lot of stuff that's gotta go up.
To be
We have
fair, you're 70.
major concern that under information technology, we have 1% of students interested. Like that scares me, but we do have 10% at STEM, so
Yeah.
we're maybe okay.
Different, right?
Yeah, and there's actual definitions with those clusters too.
Okay, that's good, because that's the only thing on
Were
there
those
that I'm seeing that's like,
definitions given to the students?
They were.
Yeah.
Yep, actually, so this part here, this career assessments, Miss Brunson on that day got on a Zoom with all the homerooms with the high school
Mhm.
and read them to the kids so that if there were, like, she wanted to explain them. She's like, I don't want them to just go through and click.
Right.
I want them to understand. And we actually do believe this is a pretty good representation of how they believe
Mhm.
themselves to be. And then kind of explained these so they could answer where they were interested in. So, yeah, it wasn't a here, just fill this out.
Right.
Because we know how kids are with that. They just, or then you realize fours disagree with everything afterwards. Why is this kid not like?
It's just kind of funny because like their phones are glued to their hand,
Mhm.
but IT is 1%.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. That is a good point. Did not notice it.
But that's specific to IT.
Yeah, it is. But
And technology is 10%.
how much time do we all spend in the IT world, even if we don't work in IT at this point?
I try to spend
Almost
very little.
zero. Yeah,
Very little.
it's broke.
Thank you, sir.
Can you fix?
Absolutely.
Thank you. That's the amount of time I spend in IT.
Okay. It's on to action items. Board approval of the number of regular and special education spaces available for open enrollment.
So you have in your board packet a spreadsheet and then a typed note. Spreadsheet comes off of
41.
the administrative team's
Thank you.
recommendation for open enrollment seats in regular education. And then the typed document is from Ms. Klein, the Director of Special Education Pupil Services, as to limitations for open enrollment. What do you prefer to start with versus the other?
Oh, us?
Yeah, you guys.
We'll talk in the future. We can't answer
I
the
didn't know if
question.
you're talking to Angie.
We'll start with Angie, since she's here.
Okay.
I feel like I should have a permanent seat here.
You could.
So, yeah, this is always a hard one. The recommended caseload limits are there. There's no clear-cut number that the state gives us for caseloads. It's determined on an individual basis. I take things into account like the needs of the student, like obviously as they're younger, the numbers are smaller than as they get older, just for independence levels. The other things that I take into is I look at, for our program, so for like speech and language, I look at how many students we're currently serving. I look at how many students are currently on a referral, where we have an evaluation in process. And so looking at those, I know it's going to seem weird to you, but I'm recommending 3 spaces at the early childhood level, even though we just approved an agreement. The intent from Pecatonica is that those students will all return to them next year. And the majority of our students in our early childhood program this year are 4K eligible next year. So that's why that number is there. I'm recommending that the elementary programs are currently full based upon the students that we have and those that we have on initial enrollments or initial referrals, that there would be 1 space at the middle school and 5 spaces at the high school level. The other program that I considered was speech and language. So we started the year with 1.4 full-time equivalent speech pathologists, up from 1.3 last year. We have adjusted it to 1.5 starting in November. So we have 1 full-time and a half-time pathologist that we share with Iowa Grant. They currently service 62 students, and there are 8 students on a referral right now for speech and language services. And that's prior to doing any child find activities with 2.5 to 3.5-year-olds in the community. So typically speech caseloads vary between 35 and 40 is kind of the number that most people use. And so that for us would mean we're already exceeding caseload recommendations. 62 is a lot with 1.5 teachers. So my recommendation would be that we would close the speech and language program as well. And then just kind of that caveat at the bottom, contracted services, because we don't have staff to fill those services and they're always a new contract. Those have always generally been closed in the past. And I gave an example of what those currently are. Those are currently deaf, hard of hearing instructor, orientation and mobility services, which we actually don't have anymore this year. Vision instructor, when we've used those in the past, we've had to contract physical therapy and occupational therapy. So those contracted services would be denied because we don't have staff to provide those services. And I know that this is always a hard one. We always want students. This, again, doesn't preclude anybody from moving into the district. So this, not the number recommendation, but, speech and language program was closed last year as well as all those contracted services. And we still had more than a dozen new students enroll with us this year. So just at the beginning of the year, not even counting those that we have identified over the course of the year. So
That's in-district students.
in-district
This is
students.
Closed only for open
This is
enrollment.
close. Yep. This is only open. This only relates to open enrollment. If they live in district, they live here and we provide services.
The potential 3 spots available for early childhood, is there a reason that it couldn't be 3 spots available across early childhood through 3rd grade or early childhood through?
Licensing is our biggest thing.
Oh, is it?
So
Okay.
the early childhood, so an early childhood license is from birth to 8. And then there's an elementary license that is for grades 1 through 8. So it's very specific for licensing potentially. So if you get too many of the younger, and we're not, like right now, we only have one staff member who's able to work with 3 and 4 year olds, 3, 4, and 5 year olds by their license.
With a special ed license.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, with the special ed early childhood license.
Mhm.
So would we have a greater opportunity to fill those spaces if instead of then having, if the license is good up to 8, instead of having 3 at early childhood, doing like 1 or 2 at early childhood and at least 1 at 4 or 5?
So right now, when I did the potential mock-ups, I split that it would be a K and 1 combination, and that by that combination already has 8 students in it,
Oh, okay.
based
That's-
upon the numbers that we currently serve.
Okay.
So right now, I kind of have the preliminary mock-up as a 4K K1, I believe it is, 2 and 3, and then 4 and 5.
So, probably aware of this family that emailed Joni and I earlier today.
Yes.
And stop me, I don't want to get too far in the weeds of a personal, private case here. So stop me anytime, but I feel like it's relevant since we're voting on numbers and closing off services and all that kind of stuff. So my understanding of the situation is we've got 4 kids open enrolling into the district, one of whom needs
So
contracted services.
the other siblings are already here.
Yes.
This one is new school age eligible because of special education services. And the services on there are contracted services that we do not have staff here for.
Right.
Like we don't have those, we don't employ those staff, we contract those staff.
Right. So for every student that comes and needs those services, we would contract
Yes.
that staff, and that expense would be partly reimbursed by Medicaid, would not.
Potentially only if they're a Medicaid eligible student, and we don't know that.
Okay. And then would it be like special ed reimbursed eligible? So like 30-something%?
I believe
reimbursed?
so. I believe we pay for those services out of our 011 account, so I think so. We also, I believe the student also has a special ed assistant staff on the plan as well, and so we would also need to hire new staff for that support.
Okay. So, if, are there any situations where once these limits are approved by the board, are there any situations where a one-time exception could be made?
So once these are in place, these go for the entire rest of the school year.
Yeah.
Through third Friday count.
Okay.
After third Friday count, it's an individual basis, but staffing is always a consideration of whether you have the staff to provide that service. So we have to follow these from when you pass them through third Friday count. After third Friday count, it's individual based upon our staffing determinations and program. So oftentimes, typically we follow these. I mean, if they were a concern when we made them, they're usually still a concern. But if for some reason in September you had 12 kids move away and all of a sudden you would have availability after third Friday count, these kind of go away until, and then it's an individual, each district looks at them individually.
Our 23, 24 caps.
policy in the packet? I didn't see it, but one time I don't schlep all my.
Our current limits that we passed last January.
I'm just comparing, so right now we're thinking about 24-25 school year, right? And so there's a relativity reality because we have real time now versus what we thought may be real time when we made it last year.
So these are board, these are the ones we brought to you last
For
year.
23,
For 23-24. So the 23-24 had 2 spots in early childhood, 3 at the elementary K-1-2 level, 0 at grade 3, 1 at grade 4 and 5, 0 at the middle school, 14 at the high school. And speech and language was closed. And then that last paragraph has done the same about contracted services.
And we've had 12 move into the district.
I believe it was 11 or 12 when I last looked, yeah.
And current referrals on
And there
top of that.
are 8 initial current referrals open.
For the feeling in question, and I'm sorry that I missed the initial conversation. That child would be looking to enroll in 4K next year.
Only eligible for special education at turning 3.
Okay.
I don't know the birthday off the top of my head, so I don't remember if she was 4K eligible for the fall or if it was the following year. I do believe it's next fall, yes, but I'm not 100% sure without looking at.
Okay. Well, so sorry, Angie. The 3 spaces available for the open enrollment and early childhood level. So we are saying that we do have 3 spaces available
For next year.
for next year.
425, so like kids
Right.
will be older, right? So in terms of licensing.
So we're talking about pre-K
Classroom.
for next year.
Yeah, I think what's more relevant to this family is that child needs contracted services,
Okay.
which we currently deny to open enrolled students. And would potentially need an additional assistant.
Well, I'm reading the language here and it says we're not required to designate special education services. It says we're not required to, but that means we could, right?
Well, you're not required to, but if you don't, that means that we have no limitations on anybody who applies with an IEP. So you could get 20 new special ed students with varying degrees of supports needed, and you would have to provide them. So the board limits are the only way for us to monitor that, taking into consideration the needs that we already have into whether we can support without needing more staff, without needing additional things. If you choose not to do anything, then they would just follow open enrollment limits. But there's a good chance that I'm coming back for more staffing as these students start enrolling with us.
In this last bit, is this policy, students with disabilities that
That's
apply for open
state.
enrollment with contracted services will be denied enrollment?
So the state basically says if it's contracted, we don't have staff. And so your staff, I mean, it's kind of like, I took that from DPI because those people, there are staff members once we contract with them, but we don't have a vision teacher on staff. So we currently don't offer that program. We will if a student moves here who has a vision impairment because we have to provide the programming for that student that needs it. But open enrolled students, we don't have to provide a program that doesn't exist. And those services are all programs that do not exist currently.
I have a couple of things. So unfortunately, I don't have this ready, and that's my bad. But I've been working on this project that I shared with Justin and Aaron about open enrollment, and Mitch has given me some data too, but I haven't been able to include that yet. And the idea was just to look at like how class sizes have grown over time so that we could project out like what our class sizes would look like from my daughter's class, which is pre-K this year, like what her graduating class will be using the data for the last 20 years. And then we can see how they grow. What I can tell you in that analysis is that your biggest jumps are in kindergarten and then freshman year of high school. Those are like the 2 times when a lot of kids open and roll here. The class sizes really grow in Mineral Point. And last year I had proposed that we could keep this rule the same, but what I had wanted to see generally with open enrollment was that we would change open enrollment to be that anybody who has a brother or sister who's open enrolled here, that we would automatically, any brothers or sisters would be eligible to open enroll, even if we have the limits here. And there was pushback on that last year, and I understood that. We didn't change that rule. We made another change. What the administration told us that the change that we did make, which Mitch, could you help refresh my memory what the change that we did make was?
So,
Or Angie?
yeah, so, we now have a wait list established, which we did take students off the wait list.
Yeah.
And we do, if a sibling is here, if one sibling gets in for open enrollment and the other one doesn't, siblings can join, but our policy still says unless special ed limits are in place beyond that.
So if somebody was if child A came in to an open class, open enrolled, and the family was willing to split for a year, the following year, child B is automatically in.
Or if child A is already here, child B would get in. But then we added that stipulation that unless special ed limits, well, unless special ed limits are in place.
Yeah. To me, sort of morally, I think, I don't know if you should say morally, that's strong, but ethically, if we're allowing students from a family in, I feel like we should be able to take all of the students. If we're taking some of your kids, we should take all of your kids, sort of however they come to us. So I was interested in modifying that rule anyway, not necessarily the disability part before tonight, but about encouraging the board to think about relaxing the open enrollment policy a bit more, to say if your brothers and sisters are in, you're in. You don't have to wait a year. And I do see that the biggest jumps in open enrollment again are in kindergarten. So to me, it doesn't make a lot of sense to have them wait a year, because then they're already going to kindergarten somewhere else, maybe. But as far as it goes to this, sorry, go ahead.
So we're talking about special ed limits right now.
Yeah, I know, but it ties into open enrollment, and I had forgotten that we had the special ed limit. So I appreciate you telling me that, Angie, and refreshing my memory. Because I was thinking, well, if there's 3 other kids already that are in, why isn't this kid in after waiting a year? But now I understand it more.
And then just a reminder too, that if or when you want to change board policy, your policy has to be in effect in December before board limits are brought to you in January for the following year. So even if you changed it, if you said come back and bring it back in February and March, still would not change the board limits you established tonight, because that has to be in effect prior to the board limits being presented to you.
You can't make retroactive decisions.
No.
My board does it all the time.
It would be nice, but you cannot.
Well, speaking of that, let's say theoretically that according to what the board passed, what's currently in place in terms of limits, that said family is denied for certain reasons. You come to the board for whatever reason, and you're advocating for the family, saying, I know that your limits that you voted on denies this child, but I'd like to advocate that the board approve an exception to your limits.
You can't
It doesn't
do that.
allow exceptions.
By law.
That was my question.
No,
By law, you cannot
they're
do that.
explicit. You cannot. You have to apply the policy the same to every family. Exceptions are not allowed.
That comes back to that from tonight through the 3rd Friday.
Yeah.
The policy change, so the exception makes me nervous. The policy change doesn't make me so nervous. The exception makes me nervous because if somebody else came and then we said, well, you don't have the same connection to our district and, you know, we don't offer that service. So
Right.
that's a no. Now I feel like, oh, now we
Creates a
are on
tricky
really,
precedent,
yeah,
for
really
sure.
shifty ground.
Is our
They're very
policy,
clear on, there are no exceptions.
is our policy, we will not take any students that need contracted services for open enrollment, or is it only is it if we don't have the space available, we won't take them?
So contracted is because we don't have the staff for them.
Okay,
Then the other ones are based upon the programs that are existing in the
Right.
district. So they're kind of related, but not really like any contracted district because we don't have staff. You're incurring a new cost to the district. And so one of the things that we can monitor is if we don't have staff, we don't have to take on that cost for an open enrolled student.
right. What I'm trying to get at, well, I guess I can just ask it this way. Is there legally, there's no way we can take the student even if we wanted to?
I would say according to the board limits and us looking at, like that open enrollment came after third Friday and before open enrollment because, you know, it came last month or whenever it was. But because there was staff required that we don't have, I don't have staff to support that student. So Mitch and I conferred, we went through the IEP. So how that works is an alternate open enrollment. Parent submits an application. We reach out to the home district. We can ask for copies of the paperwork, evaluation, and the IEP so that we can see the programs, services, and supports. And we look at whether we can meet those based upon the staff and the programs that we have. And when we looked through it, we don't have the staff and the programs to support her needs, which is why we decline or said no. I mean, whatever,
Right,
denied.
denied.
Thank you. I kept thinking decline.
'Cause
Why the open enrollment request was denied was based upon staffing.
the other
It
thing
wasn't
that
because of
comes
these
in,
limits.
No, because those limits
Expired
yeah,
after
those
third
limits
Friday.
expired, but we still looked at the services and the
Right.
services require staff that are not in place.
if we accepted the enrollment, that also means we have the staff available to provide services on day one from that student coming into our building, which would then require you to either say, Mr. Wainwright, you have full authority to hire who we need to make sure all IEP services are covered. Or we have to have an emergency meeting so that we can approve the recommendation to have that staff person hired. So, I mean, that's why this is a very difficult, and oftentimes you don't feel good about having to make the decisions that are made. But it is, the open enrollment piece comes back to what is the additional costs to the district? And if you don't have that staff, you know it's going to be an additional cost. Can you afford that additional cost? And some of these services are going to come at a pretty high price tag to provide that service. If we could do it, by all means, we would take everybody that wanted to be a student here. We would certainly take them on. If we had the space available, if we had the services available, there wouldn't be a question about it. But you've also asked me to be fiscally responsible and being able to maintain what we have for space and for staffing and things like that. And this is one of those rotten situations.
And I would agree with that. You know, we've talked about not only fiscally responsible, but meeting the needs of all of the students that are here currently. And, you know, it's not a shock to any of you, like our numbers are growing as our population grows and changes, and we're already stretched. And we want to make sure that we provide the quality of service that we've always provided. And this is the one way that we can kind of monitor internally.
Are we voting on these separately or together?
I don't think there's a vote for or what do you mean, voting on what?
Well, don't we have to approve it?
You have to approve.
You have to approve the
recommendations.
I thought you meant the.
So you can do it either way. You can vote on them separately or you can vote on them together.
I would, given your comments, I'd probably recommend voting on them separately. So any other, I would take a motion to approve the program limits for special education, open enrollment.
I'll make a motion to approve the special education program limits as presented.
I'll second.
Any other discussion or questions for Angie?
I was telling Will, I just think it's something to look out for at WASB. Best practices. I don't know, just maybe think differently around open enrollment. I don't know, can we budget differently for, I don't know, to plan for some of these costs so you can be more prepared to take on situations like this? I don't know.
Yeah, the most difficult part, I would come back to kind of the piece that we talked about with the SEL teacher. And we might have 4 people. Should I be hiring somebody at $70,000 for 1 student or 3 students? You know, and I think that's the issue. We could have somebody come in with something we're not even aware of, you know, as far as a health or, you know, educational need or life support system or whatever. It's like, we're coming here, we want to open enroll here. Yep, we accept you. And now we have to have this particular thing. And it's hard to anticipate, so to speak, what that need might be. And then the associated costs with that would blow the budget.
I do think it would be potentially reasonable to be able to budget for that if special ed was fully funded the way that it was intended to, meaning that if we can get the 66% reimbursement and you're not transferring $1.3 million a year to cover the cost of special education, that's a whole different ballgame then. But when we're transferring $1 million, you know, more than $1 million, almost $1.5 million to cover the cost for those that are living in district, it's hard to, you know, but if you can get our legislators to do a 2/3 reimbursement potentially.
Yes, my final question. Explain transfer services as it pertains to open enrollment.
Sure. So there's open enrollment transfer of service is not available.
Does not exist, right?
Does not exist.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Transfer of service is for
If a
new
student
students
moves
who
in.
enroll in our
That's what I
district.
thought. I
There
just
is
wanted to
an
be-
open enrollment actual cost. So harking back 15 years ago, it used to go between districts. So like I was teaching in Belmont, I had a student open enrolled from Shullsburg, and basically we invoiced Shullsburg for the cost of their money. That went away, I don't know, 15 years ago or something like that. I don't know, 5 years ago or something. There's a program called open enrollment actual costs, meaning that we can submit for the actual costs of the students who are open enrolled if they exceed the $13,300 that is the student pupil rate.
Yeah.
And so you have to get past that threshold and then you submit it with the state, and then that home district is basically responsible for a portion of that cost, but you have to exceed the student pupil ratio of, I think, and when I did it 2 years ago, it was 13,300. So there are a few students, there were none this year, but in the past there have been a few students that we have submitted the actual costs because they had been here since early elementary school. And as they got older, their needs were more developed and might have had, you know, like a one-to-one support assistant, and then we could do that. So there is transfer of service doesn't exist. There is a little bit of a caveat with actual costs if you exceed that student pupil ratio.
Angie, if this family had moved out of the district, what would we be doing?
You'd be servicing the student.
Okay, and then what would that, I don't know if we probably can't talk about an individual student, so.
No,
I can't ask you
and
what
I
that would
wasn't,
mean.
you know, like I'm not part of that identification and evaluation team, but
Would basically mean whatever the kid needs, we would provide
Right.
at any cost.
whatever the team
Right.
determined was the need, we would be responsible for it if they lived in district.
Right.
And if the student had started school here
They would get to
And-
stay.
and they would get to stay. So, I mean, part of this is the good and bad side of public education is that we guarantee as a country, public education to every student, but that's based on your geographic location. And if they're outside our district, we run into limitations.
And there is we've never used it, at least to my knowledge. I don't think Mitch has ever used it either. There is a stipulation within open enrollment that if you are open enrolled and were to qualify for special education and the school determined we didn't have the staff or the program and the needs to support you, that is one of the reasons you can cancel open enrollment. We have never done that because we've taken the stance that there are students, they're here, we're keeping them. But, you know, if for some reason somebody knowingly lied about it and didn't disclose that their child had a significant disability, and then they showed up and all of a sudden we had like all these other costs, it is there as a protection for districts, again, that, you know, as a protection for you of being able to service the students that live in your district.
We have a responsibility to do that.
So according to our current policy, this student will be automatically enrolled next year
No.
because
Not
the
within
child's,
IEP, because your policy states unless special ed
Okay,
program
that's
limits
right.
exist.
The special ed, are we establishing the special ed program limits by grade here? Or this is just across the board?
So these are by projected caseloads and programs. So so they're by, you know, cross-category program or early childhood program or speech program. So
So we don't see those here on this list, right?
that's the bullets of the number of spaces available is that program.
Up here?
No, at the bottom, like
This?
those. Yep. So it reads,
Oh,
you
this
know,
is
so it
caseloads.
says available in the early childhood level program or the early childhood program.
So if we opened one space available for open enrollment in elementary grade 4K to 5K, potentially this child could enroll here.
She's like, in that specific case, they still have a contracted service that we do not have staff for.
The bottom
So
paragraph.
we can't say, for the 4K, 5K level, we'll open one space that'll have a contracted service without opening up contracted services for the entire open enrollment.
Open it up for everybody,
entire-
I believe.
We can't do that.
No.
That's what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah, no, because
Thank
then
you for
again,
your
like
patience.
you're trying to make that exception and
No,
then not
understood.
applying.
We don't have that flexibility, nor can you build in that
Right.
exception clause in anything that you're doing here.
We can't afford it.
I mean, yes, you could say remove the exception clause about contracted services, but then you're taking every student who requires a contracted service. And
We can't.
if it's a student with a hearing impairment that requires an interpreter, you just spent $100,000.
Right.
We're
So,
putting every other student's education at risk at that point.
well, I think, just to explain my vote, so I'll vote just to approve this. And we've had really in-depth conversations around our finances over the last 6 months, you know, about a referendum, potential referendum, avoiding referendum, all the other things we need to do, English as a second language, whatever. And certainly that, what you mentioned earlier about, you know, and I guess what you just mentioned about affecting the quality of education for students, a function of that is like, how much money do we have to hire teachers? And it goes to our board goal of recruitment and retention. So I'm really sympathetic to this case. And I think if there was a way to do it where we could say, squeeze in the one student and hire whatever services they need, then I'd be voting for that. But it doesn't sound like there's a way to do that without opening up Pandora's box, and we can't afford it, because I know we have an awesome special education program and we're going to get kids from all over here open enrolling and we'll be in a lot of trouble financially and otherwise.
Add on to that, the students who need services will be in a lot of trouble. Because
As
it
well.
won't, like, one of the reasons I think we can somehow maintain such a good program, even though they have high caseloads, it's just really quality. That's why people want to come here, guessing. That's why we're here. That's why we moved here. So I feel like there's not necessarily just the special ed thing. There's a reality that by trying to serve everyone, you serve no one.
Right.
And it's not a system that sucks, quite frankly. Like, to your point, like, if we want all kids to get the education that they need, then we should fund that, but we don't state. And so we are stuck in this horrible moment. It sucks. So I agree.
Great. Anybody else? Okay, Angie, we'll call the question on that.
Gelding,
Yes.
Bergstrom,
Yes.
Bush,
Vote no as a protest to the unfunded mandate of special education. It's affecting real families and it's time for them to figure it out.
Harris,
I'll vote yes.
Eisner,
Yes.
Johnston,
Yes.
Dunn.
Yes.
Thanks, Andy.
I appreciated your no vote, Andy.
Yeah.
The spreadsheet that's in the board packet addresses regular ed open enrollment numbers. If you were looking at the spreadsheet, I would take you to columns. Oh, it's not in your, sorry, it's not on the paper. You have board policy. Do you have policy that kind of sets a limit on class sizes? And then you have admin recommendations. So we start there. We review our admin recommendation. What do we think? And typically those conversations focus on that 4th and 5th grade level where board policy says, you know, we would look at up to 20 and the administration tends to settle in at 18. So when you look at where we currently are in enrollment, the number of sections we have that we can rely on. So then you have class averages. The recommended open enrollment is based on the administration's recommendation. Okay. On the far right, you see in text 4K. This is according to census. This is not a list of students who we know have enrolled into the 4K program. These are students who are eligible for 4K. And that changes, you know, it might be, hey, I'm just not quite ready to send my child. But right now we're looking at 46 students based on census data that would fall into that, whether or not they all show up.
And there's other programs too.
Right. So you look down at that first level, 3rd grade, board policy, admin policy, our admin recommendations are 18. We're already over that number. And we're looking at knowingly 3 additional students coming into the district next year. These are, from what I was told, they're Mineral Point residents that are going to be bringing their students to Mineral Point next year from a different school district. So we know that number is increasing.
Grade was that? Sorry.
It's in the 3rd grade level.
And the families already talked to you about that, or this is just something that we've heard?
One of the administrators.
Yeah,
Okay.
saying our plan is to bring our students next year.
And are they included in that 66 number?
No,
No.
66 is what we have in the.
Okay.
Yeah. And that exercise I'm doing, the 3rd grade class, which my son is in, will be close to 79 students by the time they graduate, which would be the largest class in Mineral Point history.
That would be the largest class of Mineral Point history.
Yeah. 1974, 75 had 76 or something like that.
My son's at 72 graduate.
How much free time do you have on your hands? Very well.
A lot.
Serves on the board, so.
Yeah.
So if we look at the next grade level that we are recommending no open enrollments would be that 5th grade based on the admin recommendation of no more than 18. We're over that number right now. If you use the board policy, then you would have room for additional students.
You and Tom, this might be a question for you or maybe Angie, is there anything about that class that's particular? We know that there's a class that's moving through the elementary that's very resource intensive right now.
Yeah, that's a good way of
Would
putting it.
would you classify this group in a similar manner?
I think all three classrooms are having sources taught in the classroom. I think there's quite a few SEL needs in that classroom. Fourth grade. There's several, and I was just gonna look it up. I'm going with at least a half dozen identified in special education. One of our ESL learners is in that classroom. So there's definitely a pretty diverse set of needs that require multiple supports from different providers. And yes.
Angie, the fourth grade class on this
Yeah.
for 24-25 was the second grade class
And just keeps getting bigger.
last year.
Like
But we got an additional teacher though. So like, because they only had 2 teachers last
Right,
year.
you started with,
And
when
that
they
was,
were in second grade, they had 39
okay.
when you guys split them, and then they had like everyone under the sun move into that grade.
That's right.
So we added a long-term sub to make it 3
Right.
sections.
And I'm sorry, I
But
don't have
we're-
the numbers in front of me.
Yeah,
but
but we're looking at adding 9 to that class potentially.
about that extensively, and I said, cannot take 15 more people in that grade. And that the likelihood of 9 coming in one grade is fairly high. So I checked with Miss Burley for registration, and last year our 2 highest grades for open enrollment were 4K in kindergarten. One had 4, one had 5.
Okay.
You're absolutely right. It is a grade that has very complex needs in it already for students that live here. And that was why you guys determined to move it back to 3 sections.
Right.
What about K through second? If you guys already talked about this, sorry, my brain's really foggy, but why couldn't those be 20?
We were going off of your board policies, right?
Yes, the only place that we differ is in that 4th and 5th grade level.
Right.
The board
So our
the board policy would say, we would try to limit it to 20. The admin recommendation is we would recommend limiting it to 18.
But our board policy is 18 for K-1-2.
Yes.
Okay. The only other thing, as I mentioned before, that I learned from this project is that the big chance is kindergarten and freshman year. So freshman year, there's no limits. I would encourage us to be open to adding more kids in kindergarten, because if you get them in kindergarten, then they stay, and that's how you get a big class size. You have to start off with it.
Also keep in mind that,
To teach 22 kindergartners.
Yeah.
also keep in mind that students
I
who are
haven't
in
either, so
pre-K
this is
through 3 or pre-K through second aren't as independent.
Yeah. No,
And
I know.
they have higher, just like basic needs than older students.
Learning to learn.
Right.
Will, are you interested in making a proposed change to these recommended?
Before I do that, I would say the last one
Okay,
that we
sorry.
have a 0 in would be that 7th grade. Kind of look at 25 in a section. We're already at
We're already over.
31.
I've got a question on that because I know there's 4 middle school, 7th and 8th grade teachers, so there's 2 for each grade.
Right.
Are we actually only offering 2 sections of like 7th grade English, or are we offering 3 sections?
Go ahead. 3.
3 of each level,
So there's really,
really 2 teachers for each.
if we're talking about class size, there's really 3.
I don't
But
have.
generally not in a
I don't
classroom
have
more than a third of
three
the class.
If I'm offering 3 sections of 8th grade math, that means that teacher is, because there's only one of those, there's no opportunity for them to pick up something else. If they're teaching 3 sections of 8th grade math and 3 sections of 7th grade math,
I thought we already
But they
said we
are.
were offering
There's
those.
There's 3 sections of 7th grade math being taught today. There's 3 sections of 7th grade English. So there's not really 31.
Class size is around that 20. Depending on the class size.
And we're certainly not going to reduce to 2 sections of 30 kids each.
Correct. Correct.
That other policy.
So is that a misrepresentation? I mean, should it be?
I think it's accurate that there's 2 staff for each to not double count. It just,
When they do their homerooms, they also are using art as a homeroom and they're using tech ed as a homeroom. And so even in their advisory or homerooms, they're not in groups of 30, are they?
No. No, we really try to, I mean, like, middle school homeroom size,
Yeah.
probably 12 to 15 kids. High schools are about 14. We try to utilize everybody we can for when we're doing, especially with homerooms, because we're talking small group relationship building.
I know, but I think the point is when you divide the total 7th grade class, I guess it'd be the current 6th grade class by 2 staff, it makes our ratio look really far above max, like we're above capacity where maybe that's not the case. You know what I mean? Because there really aren't 2 homerooms of 31 kids. Right? Maybe we should.
Tempted
Quantify.
But homeroom's not where the bulk of the learning is happening
You're talking about something completely different when you're talking about a homeroom
versus an
Versus
academic classroom.
versus
I
an
understand.
academic classroom.
I understand, but I guess
there's 3 sections of all those academic classes.
And sometimes there's 3 teachers. When you talk like English language arts, we have an additional middle school English language arts teacher.
But the ratio is selling,
English language arts in 7th and 8th grade.
the ratio is saying it's 31.5. So I'm imagining a 7th grader sitting in a classroom with 31 other kids trying to learn math. And that's probably not accurate. He or she is probably in a room with 20 other kids.
If you want to be accurate, then I only have 1 teacher.
True. So are we talking about teacher to student ratio overall or in each academic subject that they go to?
I think we just want to really accurately clarify where we're at max capacity and where we're not. And given the fact that the 31.5 seems like a misleading number, is there another reason why the proposed limit is 0? Other than the fact that it's all boys and it's a crazy class, which isn't a good reason. But
Have you spent time in them?
that might
in there?
be influencing.
Well, the staffing numbers have not changed
The number of staff.
in all the years that we have been bringing this information forward to you. The staffing numbers have not changed. I have 1 social studies teacher for all 7th and 8th grade social studies. I have 1 math teacher. I have 1 science teacher for all 7th and 8th grade.
I understand all that.
I have a little bit more than that in the English language arts department.
I think what we're saying is in the course of a day, we have our class. If I walked into the school and I went to the middle school into 7th grade and I went to the different classrooms where classes are going on, how many kids are in each of those classes with a teacher?
Right.
How many open
desks do I have? How many open chairs do I have? Do I have 0,
And
1?
it's also not straight across the board because in middle school it's skewed by the number of kids in band and choir. So one
Correct.
section might have 26 and one section might have 17. And it's because of how band and choir schedules work. So it's not like we can split them just evenly across the board. So in some, you might have a fairly large, I think at one point last year, there was 28 in one section or something like that.
Because of the number of kids in band and choir, which is great, but it makes it very difficult.
But because of the schedule, they're kind of grouped into the same section to get everywhere together, and then it skews off some of the other numbers.
I guess my thought process was, I knew this report would say two, it's always said two, you're right. I don't think there was ever, and it's always said two, there was no intent to misrepresent anything. It's just also thinking about 3 class sizes. My concern is we have a 0 on there. We get an application for a family of 4 with a 7th grader who may fit into a class that has 17 kids in it because they're not in band. And now none of them come because the 7th grader can't get in.
I'd like to suggest a modification for kindergarten, doing the open enrollment of 10 instead of 6. For 5th grade, doing 2 instead of 0. For 7th grade, doing 2 instead of 0. And for 8th grade, doing 2 to accommodate Andy's scenario.
Can you say that again?
Kindergarten doing 10
Mm-hmm.
instead of 6. Leaving everything else the same. 5th grade, 2. 7th grade, 2, and 8th grade, 2. But leaving the other limits where they are. 3rd grade is a massive class, and if we've got 3 kids moving in there, then they're going to be up to 69 and potentially more, and I just don't think we can accommodate much more there.
Was that a motion or was that just a, because I'd second if it was a motion.
And I just want to explain the kindergarten is, again, going back to this incomplete research project that I'm working on, is that our biggest chance to increase class sizes is in kindergarten and then freshman year. Those are like the 2 times it's clear there's these really big jumps, and I can send you the incomplete spreadsheet tonight, but so I think it's just looking at that class of 48. And Mitch, I don't know if is that based on demographics, or do we have 48 kids in pre-K right now?
That's rolling that group forward.
Okay, so we'll probably get
There could be more.
we're going to get more, and we should try to accommodate them because there's going to be kids coming from the other pre-Ks in town and potentially St. Joe's and other places. So that's the place where that class gets the shot in the arm because they're making that decision that one time. And I think that our kindergarten teachers, I know it's a challenge to your point, but I think they're capable of that. So I'll make that motion.
And I will.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion second with revisions to the open enrollment limits. Did you get all those, Angie?
So it was to increase kindergarten to 10, 5th grade to 2, 7th grade to 2, and 8th grade.
Correct.
Well, all others remain the same.
Great.
And when you think about last plug about kindergarten, and that's the chance for it to go up, we're setting something tonight that's going to affect our school finances in 18 years. So that's why I'm thinking, this is the chance to set ourselves up for the future financially, getting kids in the door now, so that we can treat our teachers right and have good enrollment numbers when they're seniors in high school in 2035 or whatever it is.
Based on the, sorry, go ahead.
I struggle with the exact same thing, treating our teachers right, knowing that there's generally a small jump, not in generally open enrollment, but students who don't attend our pre-K, and then our pre-K to kindergarten generally year over year takes a little boost. And if that number happens to go to 55 and we get 10 open enrollees on top of that, now we are treating our kindergarten teachers with 22 kids apiece.
The data doesn't show that that's what happens. It goes up. I'm sorry that I didn't finish all of that. It goes up like 5 to 6 students on average per year between pre-K and kindergarten.
So you don't even know if all of those are open enrolled.
No, it's just
Oh,
the
okay.
number that goes up by
Okay.
5 or 6 students per year.
I thought you meant there was 5 or 6 open enrollees.
No.
Yeah, yeah, and that's
I just mean
generally,
enrollment.
yeah, and that's every year. That's the case.
Right.
So if
Okay.
we're gonna have students come into our district based on 48 and we get 5 or 6 more students on top of that 48, right?
Well, we have open enrollment every year for kindergarten.
No, but
so-
but what you're saying is that we have kids, like you said, that don't attend our 4K,
Right.
but they come into our kindergarten, and let's say there's 6 more that come in. So 48 plus 6, and then you're asking us to have 10 extra open enrollment slots.
So you're double counting a bit. And what I'm saying is that I'm asking for 10 open enrollment spots. When I looked at the data for the last 15 years or whatever it was, on average, our pre-K for the number from pre-K to kindergarten goes up 5 to 6 students per year. So that 5 to 6 includes not like locals and open enrollment.
Okay.
So we're probably not going to reach this 10. But I think it's the one time we have to get them in and attract more kids so we can keep the lights on. And yep, I mean, this is a whole thing that goes into the town too about making this community people want to live in and move to, and on and on. Look skeptical, Don.
Yeah, so you're saying that we are trending towards adding 5 to 6 students in kindergarten every year?
Yeah, on average,
regardless of including open enroll and living in the district?
the numbers I have don't tell me whether they
He
were
just
in the
has-
district or open enrollment.
That makes sense.
It just, we usually bump up about 5 to 6 kids between pre-K and kindergarten. So I don't know if they were open enrolled or not open enrolled.
There's some data, we've received it, some of you might not have been on the board yet, but it is data, it's demographic trends over what our population in rural Wisconsin or in this part of the state is doing in the long term. And that indicates that our enrollment across all of our schools, unless you're in a metropolitan area, is going to continue to decline. And so when you do consider that this is allowing us to potentially attract and retain students, you know, that will be here 12 to 13 years from now. And you think about data that's telling us our population our enrollment's going to decline, it makes sense.
My problem is with that big of a jump.
What's the problem?
That's a lot of kindergartners to have in one class.
It's a true state.
And I think that when we have admin recommendations coming in, probably with input from staff who actually do this job, which we don't, I think that we have to respect what they're telling us because they know more than us. And I'm not saying let's take away the 6 from them. I'm fine with the 6. I just think jumping up to 10, I just think that that's I think we're opening up the door to a potential situation like we had in the 2nd grade. And now all of a sudden we're going to need, 4 kindergarten teachers by October.
Well, but if we, I don't agree with that. I don't think that would happen. And with open enrollment, we're saying we're not taking in special needs, right? These are kids without IEPs.
But that's open enrollment. That's just not even the kids who are going to be moving into the district or
Right.
the 4K kids who live here who haven't gone to 4K. They didn't enroll in 4K, but they're going to come to us in kindergarten.
Yeah. I've lived in Mineral Point my whole life, and I've seen that our school district is capable of handling 60 to 70 kids per class. Those classes grow over time. Kindergarten's the big jump, and then freshman year is the other jump, and we don't have limits there. And I'm thinking about it. I mean, my own daughter's in that class. So I do think about it from a quality of education standpoint, certainly. But when you look at I've talked to other teachers in other districts around here, and their class sizes are much larger than ours at some. And I've had this conversation with them about like our class sizes, and Dodgeville was an example where I was talking to a teacher there that thought our class sizes were pretty low. I mean, I'm sure they were jealous, but
Kindergarten level?
no, this was later on
Okay.
in high
I was
school.
gonna say. I know the kindergarten numbers over the last few years, and
Yeah.
they don't hit 18.
Yeah. And in my little project, just to see like this is your chance to grow, you know, your enrollment. And kindergarten's sort of the place where you do it, and then it just doesn't matter later on. You just get 1 or 2 kids a year of like people moving in, and that's it. But like this is like not a 1-year decision, it's an 18-year decision to me. And I want to be able to pay teachers. I'm anticipating that enrollment's gonna go down because of demographics. So these are sort of the heydays for us to bring more kids here and have good enrollment we can sustain, you know, for the next 10 to 20 years. And these are the sort of decisions that really matter. I'm finding.
Yeah, because I mean, if we don't do anything, the numbers are guaranteed to go down.
And then it's just, we're going to referendum, we're talking about, you know, having to cut staff. And that's not what I want to do. I know the needs are different too, Christy, like than when I was in school, but you know, these numbers are about right, especially at the high school level. You see there, that's what it's sort of always been here, and the teachers have handled it. So
Mitch, can you recall a year when we've declined an open enrolled kindergartner based on hitting our limits?
Not off the top of my head. I can't say that it hasn't happened, but off the top of my head, I can't give you that answer.
So the 6 to 10 argument might all be for Mod.
We would be an extreme outlier
You get
for
10.
us to get over 6.
Well, let's vote on it, and if it doesn't pass, we'll pose new limits.
Wait, why do you say that?
Because 6 is a very high number. I mean, if you just look at the enrollments that we have, I mean,
The odds of us getting 10 open enrolled kindergartners is so low that it's almost not worth
I would guess
the number.
from what, just tracking it over the years and thinking about these decisions, a lot of the on average 6 students to kindergarten are district students that didn't attend 4K.
Mhm.
If we hit 10,
She's kicking you in the shin.
That's where I feel, I don't know, Chris, but it's like the odds of us actually turning someone away are terrible. We're basically saying, okay, have a few more kids in your class without the benefit of probably even getting them. Like I was gonna vote no, like, no, not up for this. Not worth it. Because when you look at I get what you're saying, it's a pipeline, but we need to do something to tell families that this is a thing that they can come to us in kindergarten, and we need to prepare teachers. Really rambly.
but I'm not suggesting that we go anywhere above our historic high classes. Like you look at this,
Is the point actually worth it, or do we just leave it? Because we get 6 kids from inside our district, and then we would be really lucky to get 6 to open enroll right
Yeah.
now.
if you got 6 within your district, then that would be, and you open enrolled 6, then you
Would
have
be
12,
happy to get that many kids?
Right.
12 kids. But I,
6 new kids as a kindergarten teacher?
We love.
I want you to spend like a week in that kindergarten classroom.
Well, just recall when you're.
right.
I think the only other argument for increasing open enrollment numbers is because our in-district numbers are predicted to go down.
Right, I get that. And you're saying like, if we can
Compensating.
recruit them now from out of district, they're more likely to stick around because.
And
they've
then
got
build
experience.
Because this is the one chance we have. They're not
Right.
gonna come
I
in first
understand
grade
that.
or second grade or third grade. They're gonna come in kindergarten. So this
So
is
are we
our
gonna do those
opportunity.
recruitment efforts to-
Well, I think our recruitment effort is that we're the best school district in our CISA. And everybody knows it. And a lot of people want to open enroll here. Right? I mean, because we're not going to send out a brochure like Dodgeville did, you know?
All right, maybe we should call the question.
Yeah.
Call the question, call the question.
Go ahead, Angie, with the changes.
Yes.
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 Thing.
Okay. Yes.
Bush,
Yes.
Dunn,
Yes.
Or no?
Okay,
Wrong conversation.
Gonna tell Evelyn to go out and start hitting the streets recruiting kindergarten.
oh my gosh. I'll give Ms. Burris your
You don't.
personal number and all right, next is a
Well, he's been here forever. Everyone knows where he lives, right?
second reading and approval of the library media revised policies. We have first reading last meeting, basically updating policies regarding selection of library material and the process of appeal.
Right.
Or
Make a motion.
challenging, right, public complaints about library material. Go ahead.
You're done.
Yeah, I'll take a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve all the library policies.
I'll second. You're gonna
Angie, who'd you give the second to, Angie?
Doctor.
Okay, Jonathan got it. All right, yeah.
Sound curious, just closer.
Closer.
Jonathan.
Carry
Okay.
quicker.
Any other questions, comments, discussion? Angie?
Bush,
Yes.
Yes.
Wexner,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Sheldon,
Yes.
Bergstrom.
Yes.
Dunn.
Yes. Next is second reading of the policy on use of Narcan or naloxone
I'll make a
as an
motion.
emergency medicine at the school. Go ahead.
I'll make a motion to approve the Narcan policy.
I'll second.
Any other discussion or comments?
It's a state mandate, right?
In order to be able to administer it, you have to have a board policy.
Yep.
We have someone already trained for working with Iowa County Health to get additional trainings, but in order for our trained staff member to give it, you have to have a board policy.
Sheldon,
Yes.
Bergstrom,
Yes.
Bush.
Yes.
Harris,
Yes.
Wexner.
Yes.
Johnson.
Yes.
Dunn.
Yes. Next is approval of the gymnastics co-op agreement.
Last year, you approved agreement with the Iowa Grant, Interpoint and Dodgeville school districts. It's back before you again this year because Highland has expressed interest and is actually sending, I don't know how many, but Highland is now a part of this agreement, so we need to recertify or back that agreement up again. So I would recommend that you approve the co-op, in this case, with now adding Highland to that gymnastics group.
So moved.
Second.
Joni, so moved.
Eisner, Johnston, yep. Any other discussion? I think it's great. Our kids can do gymnastics
Yep.
any way possible.
Wexner,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Sheldon,
Yes.
Bergstrom.
Yes.
Bush.
Yes.
Yes.
Dunn.
Yes.
While we're doing this, can you have them strategically place the age somewhere so it doesn't say?
I think they're
MPIG
going just
anymore?
with, I think they're just
Yeah.
going with.
So it doesn't what?
Dodgeville,
Say MPIG?
DM Pig.
It's kind of growing on me.
They're not using DM Pig anymore.
Scott?
No, they're just Dodgeville
I
now.
think it's just
The Dodgeville
Dodgeville
Co-op.
Co-op now is the name.
Okay.
That works.
Well, I'm excited about it. I like that better than DM Pig, so.
Okay, next is grant authority for WASB delegate to vote on the resolutions. Our WASB delegate this year is Mr. Harris. Take a motion to delegate that authority to Mr. Harris for the convention.
I'll make that motion.
You can go to the convention,
I'm going to the convention.
the session,
He's not going to the session.
a resolution meeting.
Any discussion?
Curious if we have input on.
Well, there's, you can have as much input as you want. I have a second packet and there's probably about 200 resolutions that
How many
So-
did you guys get through last year?
We got through, we didn't get through all of them. We got through a bunch of them and they lost quorum. Like people, it was 5 o'clock and people had been sitting there for 4 or 5 hours and just started leaving and we got below 50%.
is it one by one.
Yep.
You're really selling that WASB delegate
I was
position.
gonna
Yeah.
say,
So
Tony,
the last, okay, last year, I remembered what it was last year.
Let's vote before he quits.
Yeah.
I attached the resolution, there's more than what I attached.
Yeah, I've got them anyway.
I'm not sure if there's more than what you attached, but
Well, there is. Maybe it's a whole thick book.
it's a lot.
Yeah, that's all right.
Jonathan,
Yes.
Sheldon,
Yes.
Bergstrom,
Yes.
Bush,
Yes.
Harris,
Well, I can't vote for my own, so I'll have to abstain.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Next is approving the replacement of 2 district vehicles from Fund 46.
This was on the 10-year capital maintenance plan. We've been searching for potential replacements. We have the opportunity to replace a 9-passenger van plus a direct, so 10. With an SUV, we have a need for an SUV to potentially be transporting a student to an educational program in Verona, starting second semester. So the winter months, the SUV would provide us probably a safer vehicle. And then we also have the opportunity to purchase another 9-passenger vehicle. So we would be able to replace 2 of our vehicles based on vehicle availability. I would say at this point in time that we're looking at a couple of things. One has come off a lot, but there are others out there. But we would be looking at trying to make this purchase and replace 2 of the oldest vehicles that we have that we've used for student transportation.
So this would cost a total of $52,000 based on your executive summary.
Yeah, 33 and 19. So yeah, basically in that ballpark, yes.
Then minus potentially selling the
Do have
old van for $3,000.
I have somebody that's reached out asking about the availability, so we would potentially recoup $3,000. We could look at selling the second vehicle through Wisconsin Surplus or even on Facebook Marketplace. There is always a desire for vehicles such as this. We might be able to sell the second one for that. We have the availability. I just saw approval from the DPI to use special ed funding up to $18,000,
19, and Mr. Austin was just looking for a minivan for us.
up to $19,000 for a minivan. So right now we're looking at a 10-person van, 9 passengers, and an SUV with this purchase. We get a minivan. We'll be coming back. We have permission to use special ed funding. It would not come out of Fund 46. But I'm asking permission to try to make these purchases, replace these vehicles.
And Fund 46 is sitting at about 800,000?
Yes. A little north of 8.
Do you anticipate any changes to our insurance costs or any significant changes to our insurance costs?
I would say,
Go down because these are getting pretty massive.
That's how bad they are. Is that our insurance costs would go down?
there probably would be some kind of a change, whether it goes up a little bit because they're new vehicles or whether it comes down because they maybe
It's
have
probably
more
offset by
safety.
maintenance.
Yeah,
Either
maintenance
way.
and safety features available to them.
And we're replacing 2 vans with a van and an SUV.
Correct.
Okay. I'll take a motion to approve these purchases.
What are we motioning?
Where are we
You
motioning?
know what? Because we don't really have, my suggestion would be to put a price cap
Not to
and a
exceed.
green light. And,
Oh, that's a
because the one they found was a great deal. Great deals don't wait
Right.
4 weeks for a board meeting. And it's no longer there.
Okay, I thought the cars were already selected and.
They were,
Okay,
with those prices, but one of them,
I would maybe recommend
Hi.
like 58 or 60 is not to exceed, knowing that we're trying to hit that 52 mark.
and I will say they sent them to me, because I had a connection with where they were being sold and they picked quality vehicles in the right price range with the right mileage. I would be comfortable giving them 58 or 60, understanding it's probably going to be closer if their goal is 52.
is that a
Yeah.
motion?
Here, motion in there.
You want 58 or 60?
With 60.
I'll make a motion that we approve the purchase of these 2 vehicles not to exceed $60,000 in total.
A second.
Discussion?
Can it include the special ed one or no, because it's not on the agenda?
The agenda specifically calls out Fund
And it
46.
says 2.
And it says 2
Right.
vehicles, yes.
So,
Not my call.
I think you do because it's probably gonna be over.
An over $10,000 purchase.
It
Yeah.
will be.
We need a special board meeting on Thursday.
Here.
Right.
Can't we
We'll
just
figure
amend,
something out.
I mean, the subject is here, can't we just amend approve the replacement of 3 district vehicles? 2 using Fund 46 money, 1 using grant money?
I don't think you can amend a action agenda
Right.
without a reposting
Okay,
to the public.
well, we'll do it in February then. Or whatever,
Whatever, we'll figure something out.
yeah.
Okay,
Bush,
Yes.
Harris,
Yes,
Tyson,
Yes.
Johnson.
Yes.
Gelding,
Yes.
Bergstrom.
Yes.
Dunn.
yes,
Thank you.
Oh God, we haven't even gone into closed session.
okay.
Can bring
Um,
beer.
Next is board business. I put that on the agenda just as a placeholder for just logistics, like, we want to talk about the convention or, I wanted to mention the winter retreat we already talked about. Yeah, we're at meeting is on Thursday. Is there anything else that I'm missing?
Yeah, I'm curious about some
Snow day tomorrow.
convention logistics, but I don't think I have to ask now. We can ask once the meeting's
Yeah.
over.
Yeah.
Was there a meeting scheduled for the first week of February?
February 7th.
Finance.
Oh, it was finance, okay. Yeah, I'm not gonna be here.
Yes.
Okay.
You won't be here? You might be able to record it.
I mean, I'll be in a remote place, so I won't be able to join. But I can just get updates from you afterwards.
Yeah, well, the nice thing about recording is you can watch it after,
Yeah,
when you come
I
back.
just like interpersonal communication. I'm not a big fan of technology.
Okay,
Just like to call you.
I'll just sum it up for you
Yeah,
then.
thanks.
Okay.
Okay. Moving on. Comedy relief at 9:23. Okay. Employee services. Are we voting on 1 and 2 or just on 1?
One.
Who's being tabled? Okay. So One is approval of elementary instructional assistant, Hillary Lansing. We can vote on this after closed session, or I would take a motion to, if there's no major specific questions or concerns about this candidate, I would take a motion to approve. Do you want to give a brief introduction to the general
So
finding of the
I
applicant?
feel like this is a long time coming, but, Hillary is currently working as a special education assistant in a neighboring district and elected to apply with us. Pay cut to come to us, so I'm really excited. But it's nice to have somebody coming in with some experience, and kind of knowing what the job is. Live somewhere between here and Darlington, so I don't know if she's a Mineral Point or a Darlington address, but kind of tied to the area, and that's why the start date is what it is. She wanted to give her current employer 2 weeks notice. So she'll be starting with us January 22nd.
Make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Discussion or questions? Angie?
Harris,
Yes.
Eisner,
Yes.
Johnston.
Yes.
Gelding,
Yes.
Bergstrom,
Yes.
Bush,
Yes.
Dunn.
Yes. I'll take a motion to table the hiring of the middle school instructional assistant till the next meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Angie, we're gonna
All in
table,
favor?
we're gonna table number 2. Do we need to vote on that? Or,
Yep.
okay,
Yes.
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 Bush,
Yes.
Dunn.
yes. Okay, I will take a motion to go into closed session to do the mid-year superintendent evaluation. Gelding and
A second.
Bush.
I
Gelding,
think that's the.
Yeah.
For her, I think.
Bergstrom,
Yeah.
Yes.
Good job.
Oh,
Yes.
Harris,
Yes.
Eisner,
Yes.
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 I was like, oh my God.
Thank
It
you.
started snowing.
There's been no weather outside yet, right? It snowed in at the